Okay, welcome. Activism here. I'm going to be responding to my conversation with JF last night about multiculturalism. This is largely going to be a presentation of evidence. Might be semi-boring. People might gain more from this video by waiting till after it's done and looking through. I'll add a table of contents with the links. So I got a lot of evidence to go through. It's going to be presentation form. And I skimmed through a lot of it. I get like over 1,000 pages of stuff that I skimmed through, hundreds of pages and some PowerPoints. And there's really a lot of stuff on this issue. And I'm a multiculturalist. I love being a multiculturalist. Part of why I love being Jewish is I think the connection between Judaism and multiculturalism. However, it's not one of my areas of expertise, relatively like in field like study, like engineering or something that I've officially studied and know quite a bit about. So I am a multiculturalist. I've thought about it. I've been debating it on YouTube for a good few months now, but academically, it's not something that I've researched extensively. I bought that book by Professor Scott Page from University of Michigan. I'm familiar with his work, although it hasn't came yet. I'll be presenting some of that stuff. So there's quite a bit of evidence supporting multiculturalism. I actually found a few evidence against it. I'm going to include everything. And it's a big issue. So because you have different aspects of it, and like obviously like integration, segregation, which might focus largely on African Americans and Hispanic Americans, as opposed to university studies where you have a different a demographic sample of what multiculturalism means. So it's important to keep these issues clear. So I'm just going to go straight into SlideShare. I got a lot of stuff to show. If people here in the chat have something to add to it, I'll be checking the chat in between slideshows. I'm going to make sure this works. First, I'm going to do just a quick overview of what the demographics look like. I'm sure we've covered part of this in different areas. And this study going back from 2010, the census about racial and ethnic diversity in America in the changing demographic landscape, and we're going to see urban versus rural areas, and what's happening in the demographics. People have probably seen these charts about your racial ethnic composition in America. 1980, 80% white, to now it's hardly over 60% white, and the continual change. Let me just want to make sure my sound's working, and then go in. Okay, yes, Sarah. My video last night wasn't a response. That was just the open forum, for people to talk about it. This one's actually going to be a presentation of evidence. So just looking at these demographics, just open up with it. You see the difference between metropolitan areas, micropolitan areas, and rural areas, and the demographic compositions. So I'll just show a few charts from that. There's some good data. So here's the main thing. I'll put this one on the chat in case I will be adding the table of contents later. So if you look here, the racial composition of your big cities with 500,000 people or more, they're already plurality white, versus rural areas with less than 5,000 people that are the most white. And so as the places get bigger, you have a smaller and smaller percentage of whites. And as they get bigger, you have a larger and larger percentage of African Americans. So in metropolitan areas with 500,000 people or more, you have almost 23% blacks, 25% Hispanics, Asians. You're more likely to be in metropolitan areas. Asians are the purple. And other might include Jews. So this has been changing over decades. We see that multiculturalism is already the norm in urban areas. In the rural areas, it's hitting more slow, but also there's been an increase in ethnic diversity in America across the spectrum, but largely it's more in the population centers. And this, probably people know this stuff. You hear some there's still a white majority in over 93% of America. That was in 1980. Now it's down to 82%. There's a black majority in 5% of places that actually have a black majority, like Detroit, and even 5% have Hispanic majorities. And I think here's your top 25 most diverse areas and your top 25 least diverse areas that, if you look at some of these towns like, California, extremely diverse. Almost half of the top 25 towns on this survey are from California. And although Texas is changing, there's a lot of places in Texas that aren't diverse. And then, mid-America, and then obviously population-wise. So here are your most diverse places. Some of them have smaller populations, but if you look at your least diverse areas, that look how small those populations are. So, places that have almost no diversity are probably all white. These are places that only have a few thousand people living there. So this is a general trend in survey. I'm sure people are generally familiar with this data. So let's keep on going. So yeah, I just wanted to put that data out there. There's going to be more coming. So let me just check the sound, make sure it's working. A few people wandering in. And okay, so one of the most key areas of diversity is in the workplace. Studies have been conclusive relatively. I'm gonna go through the McKinsey study that I'd shown JF before the show, and he had mentioned. But of the most conclusive places of the benefits of diversity is in the workplace. Here's a article. Business 7 benefits statistics proving diversity. So you have diverse executive boards generate better returns, and that's going to be showing the McKinsey study that I'm going to look through after this. And let me put this in the chat if anyone's more academic and wants to look at that. I appreciate you're saying this here, Blue, about diversity is good, find facts to support diversity is good. And I'm a multiculturalist by nature. I've been a multiculturalist my whole life. I did research before the presentation, but I didn't, JF's public space isn't really a presentation style. And I will be showing all the data that I found, including data that is against diversity, but generally the data does support that diversity is better. There's a reason why we're moving in that direction. Because here are your companies with top quartile diversity, defined as women and foreign nationals on their executive boards, generated return on equity the 50% higher on average than companies in the bottom quartile of diversity. And the more diverse places had a 14% higher EBIT, the earnings before interest and tax on average. So basically everyone can agree more money is good reason to have a more diverse board of directors. And we'll look more into that actual study. I think I have the Credit Suisse. So Credit Suisse, I think I have this study also, but there's a link to the study in that the Credit Suisse's own study that large businesses, women on the board outperform male-only boards. Diverse boards won out in every front, including higher rate of returns, lower debt to equity ratios, higher price book value, higher average net growth. And the study from Tufts. Let me just click at this so people could see the type studies. So this the Credit Suisse report, and there's more evidence on this one. Data from UNESCO. There's a lot of research in this field of the benefits of diversity for business. You uncover more angles. The study from Tufts, racial diversity improves group decision making in unexpected ways. And that's somewhat related to Scott Page's research from University of Michigan that I'm going to get more into later. Ethnic diversity leads to better stock picking. and the study at Columbia, MIT, and Texas. You want to click on these links to just see the research. I think I have I don't have that, but there's already been substantial amount of studies on this. New viewpoints lead to better results. Just one of the generic arguments I made about the benefits of diversity, more viewpoints, more different opinions, sharpening your opinions with people who have divergent ways of thinking. And I guess this is Brigham Young University that also has a study on this. And diversity can carry the day. This is Scott Page, University of Michigan. So, I mean, there's a lot of studies on this, and I hope people will do more research on this. And this really isn't my area of expertise, so I'm doing kind of like just a public study on this. And diverse teams get more credit in their fields. Building diverse teams has also been shown to build a better product. Scientific America looked at 1.5 million academic papers and found that papers written by diverse groups received more citations and had higher impact factor than papers written from the same ethnic group. This was a study of 1.5 million papers, Scientific American, and showing diversity helps, is beneficial. Decades of research by organizational science, psychologists, sociologists, economics, and demographers show that socially diverse groups, that is, those with a diversity of race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientations, are more innovative than homogeneous groups. It seems obvious that groups of people with a diverse individual expertise would be better than a homogeneous group at solving complex, non-routine problems. It's less obvious that social diversity would work in the same way, yet science shows that it does. This is not only because people with different backgrounds bring new information. Simply interacting with individuals who are different forces group members to prepare better, to anticipate alternative viewpoints, and to expect the research consensus will take effort. So look at all the research I'm doing into this, and so information, innovation, diversity promotes thought, anticipation, producing excellence. And I mentioned that greatly in the chat. So we're going to go on with this, because I do want to show that there's substantial evidence to the benefits of multiculturalism. So there's quite a bit to present here. I see I got almost a minute here. Just check the chat real quick. Hard to follow. Okay, so I'm just going to keep on topic. If you guys in the chat, whatever you're talking about, I'm going to keep on topic. This is my response about an overview of the evidence in favor of multiculturalism. So here, Center for American Progress, top 10 economic facts of diversity in the workplace. And, these are all quoting studies. Diverse workforce drives economic growth. The McKinsey study that we're going to look at. A diverse workforce can capture a greater share of consumer market. It's also a substantial amount of evidence in that. And, that could be because people relate to each other, what I discussed in my post show, where people are more likely to buy from their own kind or international business. Recruitment from a diverse pool of candidates means a more qualified workforce. A diverse and inclusive workforce helps businesses avoid employee turnover costs. And so here's a quick showing of the discriminations in dollars, how discrimination hurts your business. Here they even have gay and transgender, the difference in beneficial output of companies that support gay and transgender, better benefits, turnover rates, the fair policies, promoting better job performance. So I encourage people to look through this. 5, diversity fosters a more creative and innovative workforce. Make sure I'm putting these in the chat. – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – – Let me make sure I have this last one in the chat also, just because I'm going to add a table of contents later, and I'll add all these in the link. So yeah, I enjoy people are watching now and active in the chat, and if people take more, but I will add a table of contents later. The Forbes study, 85% agreed or strongly agreed that diversity is crucial to fostering innovation in the workplace. The Forbes study of 2011. So people could click through on their own. Business needs to adapt to our changing notion to be competitive in the economic market. Census data. Diversity is a key aspect to entrepreneurialism. The Census Bureau, different statistics. National and Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce. Diversity in business ownership, particularly among women of color, is key to moving our economy forward. Diversity in the workplace is necessary to create a competitive economy in the globalized world. Diversity in the boardroom is needed to leverage a company's full potential. Okay, so here's the McKinsey study that I had put with JF last night, and that he had looked at and he tried to reject, but it's pretty hard for him to reject. I think when he looks at the evidence. So, the McKinsey company, business consulting, and it's a pretty conclusive study that although JF tried to at least question it, and that's why I did that video on science and the philosophy of science and social sciences to see what we could get through correlation, causation. But in terms of anything else people talk about, like IQ and immigration, this is about as well factored. So relation between diversity and business performance persists. This is over the 2015 study. Significant correlation between a more diverse leadership team and financial outperformance demonstrated 3 years ago. The data was more than the 2015, the first study on this issue. Leadership roles matter. Having a more diverse leadership improves profitability, not just gender. We're talking about all types of diversity. And there's a penalty for opting out. People that opt out of diversity are 29% less likely to achieve over average profitability. And also local context will matter. Say diversity, multiculturalism means different things in different areas. And I encourage people to read this whole report. And I'll just show a few of these charts that JF, we weren't able to get into it. I don't know if it would have been worth arguing on his forum about the statistics. So correlation between diversity and performance, and you're looking at all these different companies, few hundred, 300 companies, and they ranked them on how diverse they were, and they divided them into quarters, the most diverse versus the less diverse, in terms of gender and ethnically and cultural. And you have 2014 and 2017, and you could see that it became more pronounced over time. Diversity matters more. And 15% difference from the more diverse company to the less diverse company in financial performance. And gender diversity also making a large difference, not as important as ethnic diversity. More on gender diversity. You could look at the quartile, the division of the number of women on executive staff. The quartiles that they're dividing between the first quartile and the last quartile, and obviously even in the first quartile, only 1/3 of the board are women. In the bottom quartile, only 7% are women. So how likely are you to do better than the industrial mean based on diversity? Almost 20% higher if your board of directors is diverse. Financial performance. So this is pretty clear data. McKinsey's a pretty well-respected forecasting company. The data is pretty conclusive that having diversity in your companies leads to better business in more ways. So yeah, I'll encourage people to read through this whole study, and there's worldwide comparisons, and there's a lot to it. I encourage, we have a lot of data here to get over, so I encourage people to read through the whole study. So let's keep on going. Here, Scott Page, I ordered his previous book, and he has this new book called The Diversity Bonus, professor at University of Michigan right near me. And you're saying, what's the benefit to diversity in business? It's not simply a moral thing, like JF said, the right thing to do in order to make society more integrated and just. Diversity can improve the bottom line of business and other organizations facing complex challenges in the knowledge economy. These bonuses include problem solving, increased innovation, more accurate predictions, all of which lead to better performance and results. The diversity bonus refers to an increase in performance that results from cognitive diversity when team members think differently, when they bring different representations, categories, heuristic, models, and framework. Their collective performance includes a diversity bonus. An extra amount, this bonus is quantifiable, measurable, and valid. Scott Page used the scientific method to demonstrate the benefits of diversity. And, so he's got 3 examples here. This is an interview with the Princeton University Press that published his books. So, just the advantage of a group of people thinking together that have are looking at a problem and trying to come up with solutions. And they tested it versus a single person versus a group of similar intelligent people and different people. And the evidence has clearly shown that diverse groups put out better results. The evidence from the academy is overwhelming. It used to be that most papers were written by 1 or 2 people. Now teams predominate, as noted in a major report by the National Research Council. Multiple studies based on about 20 million academic papers written by, among others, these names, find that working with people from other schools or from different ethnic groups results in substantial diversity bonuses. In the creative domains, diversity bonus is even larger. There's a question, what's the difference between cognitive diversity and identity diversity? So they're interwoven because different type people think differently, have different perspectives. And it says that diversity bonuses do not necessarily exist for every single question. And I encourage people to read through this and even to get Scott Page's book, which I've ordered. Here's a picture, the diversity bonus. Okay, so here's actual published Scott Page's study at the National Academy of Sciences. This is accepted scientific papers. Most recent this is from 2004 already. He's been working on this for a long time. You introduce a general framework for modeling functionally diverse problem-solving agents. In this framework, problem-solving agents possess representations of problems and algorithms that they use to locate solutions. We use this framework to establish a result relevant to group composition. We find that when selecting a problem-solving team from a diverse population of intelligent agents, a team of randomly selected agents outperforms a team comprised of the best performing agents. This result relies on intuition that as the initial pool of problem solvers becomes large, the best performing agents necessarily become similar in the space of problem solvers. Their relatively greater ability is more than offset by the lack of problem solving diversity. A diverse society creates problems and opportunities. In the past, much of the public interest in diversity has focused on issues of fairness and representation. More recently, however, there has been a rising interest in the benefits of diversity. In the legal cases surrounding University of Michigan's admission policies and the effort to curtail affirmative action in California, Texas, and elsewhere, there have been claims that diverse perspectives improve collective understanding and collective problem solving. Coincident with a political and legal wrangling has been an effort for the part of scholars to identify how to exploit the diversity both in solving hard computational problems and in human organizations. In common understanding, diversity as a group of people refers to differences in their demographic characteristics, cultural identities, and ethnicity. In training and expertise, advocates of diversity and problem-solving groups claim a linkage among these sorts of diversity. And, this goes on and on. Let me see if I could jump to the conclusions. I encourage everybody to read this, and it's actually quite mathematical. And, Scott Page is a mathematician specializing in complexity. The main result of this paper provides conditions under which, in the limit, a random group of intelligent problem solvers will outperform a group of the best problem solvers. Our result provides insights in the trade-off between diversity and ability. And this is 2004 when Scott Page was first starting studying this, and we'll see further that this is been later to include more ethnic and multicultural studies. So here's a critical review. This is the book I ordered, The Difference, How the Power of Diversity Creates Better Groups, Firms, Schools, and Societies. And this is a critical review that from Tufts University about the power of this diversity. So if you're listening now, I'm going to add all these links and put a table of contents on it later. And this kind of just like an out loud study session, because this isn't my area of expertise. So I did spend a good few hours this morning and last night trying to collect together this data. And I do want to show that there is quite a bit of basis for the benefits of diversity. And, so here, I don't know if it pays to flip through this, is a critical analysis of Scott Page's books, the empirical evidence, just summing up here, Page's rhetoric moves us way beyond accepting diversity as a matter of taste and onto realms where diversity affects production functions too. That is a societal opportunity set defined in terms of social outcomes. He says at closing of the text, when we meet people who think differently than we do, we should see opportunity and possibility. We should recognize that a talented I and talented they can become even more talented we. The happy vision rests not on a blind optimism or catchy mantras. It rests on logic, a logic of diversity. There's most empathetically an eloquent manifesto in defense of diversity. Page is at the same time offering a different way to market economic science, and his goals are lofty indeed. Page's fascinating work is provoking economics in a new way, especially in applying it to problem solving. Still, it would take our battle-hardened empirical toolkits to make the point of the difference fully compelling, and thus to help establish a science of difference. In the treacherous world of empirics, we cannot always control for everything, identities being deceiving, and causality can be nebulous because computation too can be emergent. There also remains the issues of how to implement policies that enhance diversity by improving the representation of disadvantaged groups in democratic societies. Such policies may involve discriminatory practices that lead to dilemmas, especially when identities are not obvious or visible. Still, there is enormous public interest in overcoming the accumulated effects from past disadvantages, access to resource and skills. We should not expect that all these important issues will be addressed by a single book. This big book does make an excellent case for the value of further research and thinking about implementation of diversity enhancing policies. Within such an agenda, sharply focused empirical research deserves special attention, is therefore even more well worth reading. So this is somewhat critical of Scott Page, and hope that maybe someone will find this stream that has more expertise on this issue than I do. But as I said, I want to put this evidence out there, and this is really the top level of research now. So I had some other parts that I talked about the Army in national security. So let me get one more in economics. This one's from Deloitte Push. Also, like McKinsey, and it's more of the same. This is a more recent January 2018. The diversity and inclusion revolution, 8 powerful truths. So it said, in the business world is the strongest evidence for the benefits of diversity. And it's basically universally accepted. Anyone watch frame games on Starbucks? There's a reason why that's universal. Okay. So here we get diversity of thinking is the new frontier. The most innovative company must also be the most diverse, says Apple. We take a holistic view of diversity that looks beyond usual measurements, a view that includes the varied perspectives of our employees, as well as an app developers, suppliers, and anyone who aspires to a future in tech, because we know new ideas come from diverse ways of seeing things. So there's a quote from Apple. Here's a source from a book of the value of diversity, benefiting in innovation, and actually there being economic business risk to not being diverse. So diversity in thinking is powerful for 3 reasons. First, it helps create a stronger and broader narrative about the case for diversity, one in which everyone feels relevant and part of shared goals. Secondly, is more accurately reflects people's intersectional complexity instead of focusing on only one specific aspect of social or demographic identity. Third, a focus on cognitive diversity recognizes that demographic equality, rather than being its own end, is useful as a visible indicator of progression towards diversity of thinking. Diversity without inclusion is not enough, so you need to include people. You can't just have them there and then not be inclusive. And so there's been research that shows the difference between just having diversity and having inclusive diversity. And here's a little demographic that they're 2 times likely to have an inclusive culture, is 2 times as likely to meet or exceed financial targets, 3 times likely to be high performing, 6 times more likely to be innovative and agile, and 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. And he's quoting from Juliet Burke, which 2 heads are better than one, how diverse teams create breakthrough ideas and make smarter decisions. More on the science of inclusion, fairness and respect, value and belonging, safe and open, empowered and growing. And another book by Juliet Burke, follow up on that. First, people feel included when they're treated equitable and with respect. Participation with favoritism is the starting point for inclusion, and this requires attention to non-discrimination and basic courtesy. The next element relates to feeling valued and belonging. Inclusion is experienced when people believe that their unique and authentic self is valued by others, while at the same time have a sense of connectedness or belonging to a group. At the highest point, inclusion is expressed as feeling safe to speak up without fear of embarrassment or retaliation, and when people feel empowered to grow and do one's best work. Clearly, these elements are critical for diversity thinking to emerge. Inclusive leaders cast a long shadow. Deloitte's research shows that behavior of leaders can drive up to 70 percentage points of difference between the proportion of employees who feel highly included and the proportion of those who do not. This effect is even stronger for minority group members. Furthermore, an increase in an individual's feelings of inclusion translate into an increase in the perceived team's performance, decision-making quality, and collaboration. So you see that in Figure 4, the inclusion. So what distinguishes highly inclusive leaders from their counterparts? Deloitte's research identifies 6 significant traits, all of which are interrelated and mutually reinforcing. Commitment. Deeply committed to diversity and inclusion because it aligns with their personal values and they believe in the business case for diversity and inclusion. They articulate their commitment authentically, bravely challenge the status quo, and take personal responsibility for change. Courage. They're humble about their own capabilities and invite contribution of others. Cognizance of bias. They're conscious of their own blind spots as well as flaws in the system and work hard to ensure opportunities for others. Curiosity. They have an open mindset. They're deeply curious about others, listen without judgment, and seek to understand culturally intelligent, they're attentive to others' cultures and adapt as required. In collaboration, they empower others to create the conditions such as team cohesion for diversity and thinking to flourish. Middle managers matter. Research paper 2007, the grassroots are energized, the executives have seen the light, and the top-down and bottom-up momentum comes to a screeching halt right at the middle girth of most organizations. When many executives have been afforded time to learn, reflect, and debate, mid-level managers are often given directives, a change management process that leaves questions unaddressed. So you do have this conundrum in business, the middle management conundrum. Here's a further chart of the 6 traits. I encourage people to read through this. So here's Deloitte's 6 personas of strategic change applied to diversity and inclusion: opposed, unaware, undecided, anxious, undecided, fatigued, supported, committed. So I'll read through these. Opposed, a saboteur, deliberately undermining diversity and inclusion goals through words and actions. Unaware, concerned about how diversity and inclusion may impact him, her colleagues. Undecided, anxious, in the dark about diversity and inclusion, either because he or she never read or heard about it or does not remember it. Undecided, fatigue, once fired up about diversity and inclusion, now disengaged by the lack of progress. Supportive, in favor of diversity and inclusion, but sees goals achievement as someone else's job, and committed, takes personal responsibility for achieving diversity and inclusive goals. Senior leaders can influence middle management in a variety of ways: storytelling, addressing myths and misconceptions, open conversations, exposing middle management to influential role models. This really, I hope people read through this, and I mean, this is semi more related to business, tangible goals, make ambitions real. There's been an overemphasis on diversity and underemphasis on inclusion, as well as the broader ecosystem of accountability, recognition, and rewards. The truth is, without appropriately crafted tangible goals, ambitions are merely ephemeral wishes. Match the inside with the outside. Your case study is Samsung. Perform a culture reset, not a tick the box program. So, Deloitte has their own model. This is what Deloitte does, helps people, become diverse. So you have your, levels: compliance, programmatic, leader-led, integrated. Different strategies for legal, human resources, business leaders, whole organization. So I'll read these final 8 points. Recognize that progress will take a cultural reset. Create shared purpose and meaning by broadening the narrative to diversity and thinking and inclusion. Build inclusive leadership capabilities. Take middle managers on the journey. Nudge behavior change by rewiring processes and practices. Strengthen accountability, recognition, and rewards. Pay attention to diverse employers and customs. Okay, I have quite a bit more to get through. I'm going to be talking about the Army, national security, education, health outcomes. So let me do this last one on innovation, and then maybe we'll take a break. I'll let someone on the show if they want, to finish the business side. So let me check in the chat. I got almost 20 people. Does anyone want to come on and discuss this? Is anyone interested in delete this request? Anyone want to come on and discuss some of this or have any points, or should I just continue? Yeah, I'm doing more presentation, so I'd like to be able to talk and engage the chat, but my point is to do an overview of the data and, just answering a bunch of questions. So I don't know if anyone here, I'll put the link in the chat. I'm going to go to my refrigerator and get Watermelon. I've been drinking watermelon juice, so I can see if anyone wants to come on and discuss a little bit what we talked to till now. And, like I got a lot more to go through. That, that's less than half of the evidence so far. And, because most of the evidence and research is done on business results, and that's the most conclusive, although there's evidence really across the spectrum. So I'll take it off screen share. I'll show everyone. I got my watermelon juice. I've been liking this. I enjoy it. Give me the energy. Say a blessing in Hebrew. Thank God for watermelon juice. Highly recommend it. I'm not sure what you want, Roy. Like, I don't know how to engage the chat. I mean, because there's a lot of information here. I just want to cover and show the scientific evidence, and really people got to do their homework. I'm presenting like thousands of pages of reading, and I can't study all this stuff. This isn't even my field of expertise. I just, I'm a multiculturalist. To me, it correlates with Judaism. It's important to me. I was happy to debate it with JF, and I want to give a more academic, scientific perspective to it, but it's not my area of expertise. And you can see how much evidence is out there. I like pineapple juice also, but okay, looks like no one's coming on, so I'm just going to continue. I'll put it back into screen share, and I have my earphone off, so if someone joins, I probably won't even notice till I check the next chat. Okay, so here is cultural diversity, knowledge diversity, and innovation. So in terms of business results and practices, conclusive studies demonstrating the correlation, and active results that have shown that diverse companies perform better than non-diverse ones. And also in terms of innovation, that the aim of this paper is to explore. I'm going to add this to the chat. I mean, this is, I guess, like high IQ content. This is really, I hope there's readers out there that are going to read through this stuff. So the aim of this paper is to explore the impact of cultural diversity on innovation. In doing so, this paper investigates the interaction ethics between cultural diversity, knowledge diversity, and knowledge regime in an organizational context where actors interact and exchange knowledge through networks. The underlying premise of this paper is that the impact of cultural diversity on innovation depends on both technological opportunities prevalent in the industry and also the diversity in the competencies among others. And agent-based simulation studies carried out in the model networks form and evolve through the interaction between agents, through which they learn. The model investigates both the structural characteristics of networks that evolve and the knowledge growth in the population corresponds to varying degrees of cultural diversity and knowledge diversity. The results reveal that the extent to which cultural diversity yields more learning depends on the characteristics of the knowledge regime, as well as the extent of knowledge diversity within the population. In particular, in intermediate degrees of technology opportunities, cultural diversity has a negative impact on innovation. So this actually has some positive and negative showings on the value of diversity, and shows that really there's a lot of factors that affect it. I encourage people to look through it. We see going back already to the 30s, diversity is considered one of the most important ingredients in innovations. Organizational studies, studying this for a long time. So here, this study is really trying to dissect the different factors at play, and is just more diversity always benefit? And this study actually says no, that the diversity is not like diversity always helps and always brings more innovation. There's other factors at play. And I looked at this before, and there's actually, so how does cultural diversity and knowledge diversity interact with each other as far as they affect learning? How does the interaction depend on the knowledge regime? Is a parameter space defined by knowledge regime, cultural and knowledge diversity? What are the structural characteristics of the networks that form and evolve? What agents select partners according to their self-interest and cultural attributes? 2 stages, the model. The first stage, agents select partners and networks form. Second stage, agents learn from their partners and knowledge diffuses. This is a pretty complicated study. There's a lot of mathematics and charts and the form, and the findings are not, so I mean, it's not that diversity always benefits. There's cases where it does. So in this paper, the impact of the 3 constructs of knowledge and networks is investigated. These constructs are cultural diversity, knowledge diversity, and technological opportunities in an industry. Although the impact of these factors on innovation has been studied in separate literature strands in previous literature, how they interact with each other in a dynamic setting where networks form and endogenously has not been studied for. In this sense, the results of this paper highlight some interesting interaction effects between cultural diversity, knowledge diversity, and innovation. Overall, the results of this paper reveal that the impact of cultural diversity on innovation depends on the existing technological opportunities and how the knowledge is distributed in a population of agents. The simulation exercise consists of a population of agents who select partners for knowledge exchange learning. Partner selection depends on the attitude of agents towards knowledge sharing, which we modeled as determined by the cultural attributes. In addition, partner selection depends on the knowledge complementarities between the agent and the potential partners. In the model, the agents form partnerships. They learn from each other. Their knowledge levels are updated. And with updated knowledge levels, they select new partners. In this way, networks form. The paper addresses 3 questions in such a regime. First question is concerned with the impact of the diversity and cultural attributes on the population, on knowledge growth and networks. Second question is concerned with the impact of knowledge diversity of the population on knowledge and networks. Finally, the third question is concerned with how these effects are shaped by the surrounding knowledge regime, which we characterize by technological opportunities. The result of the simulation study revealed that the impacts of cultural diversity on innovation depends on knowledge diversity and technological opportunities. Distinguishing between 3 knowledge regimes, low technological opportunities characterize a system in which there is only knowledge diffusion and weak opportunities for knowledge creation. In a high technological opportunity regime, the dominant form of innovation is continuous creation of new knowledge. In the intermediate technological opportunity regime, innovation landscapes is characterized by both diffusion and new knowledge creation. Real-world examples for such regimes would be on one side, traditional low-tech industries in which innovation intensity is lower than others. The case of industries with high technological opportunities corresponds to cases like the software in which certain software code can be used in a variety of different contexts, which connote an industry with continuous new knowledge creation. Other industries can fall in between the 2 contexts, or the 2 extremes. The results reveal that cultural diversity has a negative impact on the knowledge growth in intermediate degrees of technological opportunities, where there's both diffusion and new knowledge to creation. Knowledge diversity has a similar effect on innovation. In such knowledge regimes, homogeneous populations yield the highest knowledge growth. The underlying reason behind this result can be related to the network of actors. In particular, in the model, knowledge growth happens through networks. It is found that higher degrees of cultural diversity tend to reduce the extent of network density between variety of agents. A similar result is attained from the impact of knowledge diversity, which reduces the extent of partnerships between different agents. According to the results of the simulation analysis, there is also an interaction between knowledge diversity and cultural diversity. In particular, the highest knowledge growth and the highest interactions occur when both cultural diversity and knowledge diversity is a minimum. How can these results be interpreted in the context of existing literature? 2 conclusions can be drawn. First, that the impact of cultural diversity on innovation is found in the literature to be a double-edged sword, emphasizing both potential advantage and disadvantages of cultural diversity. In this paper, we show that this largely depends on the other characteristics of the industrial system, like the knowledge diversity and technological opportunities. Even if cultural diversity has a negative impact on knowledge, this negative impact could be partially offset by a more homogeneous distribution of knowledge among actors. Secondly, the negative side of the double-edged sword is especially valid in industrial regimes with intermediate degrees of technological opportunity. Finally, this paper also shows that impact of knowledge diversity on innovation depends on technological opportunities. The generally accepted idea of the inverted U relation between knowledge, similarity, and learning is valid only in certain knowledge regimes where technological opportunities are relatively low. So that was, pretty intense. So, that study, I hope, some people are going to read through that and will have some, comment or understanding on it. Let me look in the chat if anyone understood what I was saying. So, I'm looking for the truth. I'm a multiculturalist, but, fact is that multiculturalism and diversity is not always good. There's different cases. It's like you're saying, diversity and multiculturalism creates society mistrust in the short term and extreme violence in the long term. There are advantages and disadvantages, and all of the above strategy and multiculturalism allowing us to maybe meet and work in the public square when it's beneficial, and have our separate areas and our separate parts when necessary. I support all of the above strategy, and that's why I'm showing you the current state of evidence for and against. Okay, here's the Army diversity statistics on the U.S. Army, what I mentioned about diversity benefiting Army units. And I'll put the link in the chat to this one also. I'll do the slides, and then maybe I'll go over the Army Force Task Force final report. This is in 2011. This, I think, was presented to Congress, and there's an actual division of diversity, and there was, this is from the Office of the Secretary of the U.S. Army. The Army definition of diversity: the different attributes, experiences, and backgrounds of our soldiers, civilians, and family members that further enhance our global capabilities and contribute to an adaptive, culturally astute Army. So you got a nice diagram comparing diversity. EEO, I don't know if it's ethnic or an EO. So EEO is race, color, gender, national origin, religion. Disability, age, reprises genetics. And EO has less of those, and we see how those overlap. And, you have affirmative action, eliminate the effects of past, target underrepresented, diversity, inclusion. So similar to the business of the broad direction, the Army is going in the same direction as a business group, and maybe we'll talk more about affirmative action, the policies. People in university, I have slides on that, because when you recognize the benefits of diversity, how do you create diversity? And if the current application settings are merit-based, is it worth trying to create diversity against meritocracy? So what are the implications? Why does diversity matter? Global engagement, the human dimension to conflict, culturally astute forces, agile and adaptive leaders, future operating environment, personnel readiness, inclusive environment, high performance, to manage talent, human relations, national implications involving demographics, competitive labor markets attracting diverse talent, youth education, physical fitness, national expectations, teamwork, cultural skills, innovation, performance. So, looking at the future, what's going to be in the future, that demographic changes that the Army is, knows is going to happen. So, the global environment, volatile, uncertain, complex, a lot of conflict. So the Army needs to understand cultures, utilize language diversity, speaking a bunch of language, be resilient, understand self, knowing human dimension, the nation in America, plurality by 2040, changing demographics. So the Army has to match that. The workforce, disabilities, the connection between diversity and high performance. A high performance organization is one that leverages the total capacity of all its people. So how do we get there? These are the Army goals, similar to Deloitte. Ensure leadership commitment, institutionalize talent management, establish a resource structure to support the Army diversity roadmap, implement diversity training and education, create and maintain an inclusive environment. So, very similar to the Deloitte study. How are you going to measure success? the national leader in embracing the strength of the division of diverse people in an inclusive environment, investing in and managing talent, valuing individuals, and developing culturally astute soldiers and civilians who enhance our communities and are prepared for the human dimension of leadership and global engagement. Some of what the Army's already done: completed diversity education, 560 leaders. They've established workshops, training, working groups, action plan, task force, diversity competencies for all levels. Goals and objective. Goal 1, ensure leader commitment to diversity and inclusion, practices all levels. So more in depth, I encourage people to follow the link and read this for themselves if they're interested. We have outreach program. You've got to be Army-wide. Just one example: develop and implement mechanism for officially integrating and synchronizing Army diversity outreach to achieve optimal senior leader participation and help attract and recruit highly qualified soldiers and civilians from different backgrounds. So the takeaway message is we continue to expand the knowledge and understanding of the diversity within our ranks. Not only will our strengths, versatility, and the efficiency be amplified, but we will be more effective in understanding the cultures and environments where we serve. We expect all leaders to develop and maintain an inclusive environment that will sustain the Army as a relevant and ready force. More examples. And let me also look here at the final report. Yeah, this is related to Obama policy. And so David Chu, former Undersecretary of Defense: the armed forces pride themselves on being leaders in diversity. In addition to providing quality, diversity gives the military more strength by ensuring that it reflects the very same American population it's called to defend. The Army has maintained a long and proud tradition of diversity since the presidential executive order in 1948 on equitable treatment and opportunity in the armed service. It's achieved a lot, but not enough. Looking for outcomes, accessions, retention, performance, personal processes, national implications, education, training, global engagement, best practices. So similar to what I read in the slides, but that was the point I did make. I'm just providing evidence for things that I had mentioned in JAP's debate, and I had previously researched a lot of this stuff. So I'm just putting it out there now, so people that do care more about this, that they'll be able to see some of the evidence. So you are making points. There are negative aspects to diversity, but generally across the board, diversity is respected, and that's the paradigm we're functioning under. Just like evolution, I don't really like evolution, but that's the paradigm. That's what they teach. That's how biology, anatomy, medicine is based off of. Diversity, multiculturalism is the paradigm that we work under. You could oppose it. And so I'm just saying, why did that become the norm? So obviously, like, I'm a Jew, recognizing biases was one of the things Deloitte mentions, and so obviously as a Jew, I am biased in favor of evolution, and I recognize that. But saying there is some more to that than just my bias as being a Jew. There's actual evidence for that. Okay, so let's look at national security. The connection between diversity and national security. So President Obama issued in 2016 the presidential memorandum on promoting diversity and inclusion in the national security workforce. You could click on that and read the presidential memorandum. Memorandum instructs federal agencies engaged in diplomacy and national security activities, which include all branches of the U.S. military, U.S. Department of State, Justice, Homeland Security, U.S. Agency for International Development, intelligence community to promote a more inclusive work environment and to adopt measures to facilitate more transparent and comprehensive data collection on the diversity of their employees. A diverse and inclusive workforce improves the effectiveness of national security agencies. Federal employees should reflect the talent and experience of the entire country. The national security workforce is no exception. The people responsible for keeping the nation safe and securing U.S. interests abroad are, to a greater extent than any other segment of the federal workforce, more likely to engage with officials and citizens of foreign countries and to represent the United States in both public and private settings every day to serve Americans' face to the world. It is therefore critical that they also represent the nation's commitment to democratic values such as pluralism, equal opportunity, and inclusion. The more the national security workforce reflects America, the more effective it can advocate American values on a global stage. A broad and heterogeneous range of state and non-state actors increasingly shape the global environment. In order to achieve U.S. policy objectives in such an environment, foreign policy and national security professionals must have creative problem-solving skills and the ability to build consensus, anticipate alternative viewpoints, and adapt to constantly shifting circumstances. These are all qualities that are more likely to be found in organizations characterized by a wide spectrum of backgrounds and experiences. Research has demonstrated, click on this link, the same Scientific American article that was referenced in a previous study that diversity makes us smarter. It's not confined to civilian employees. There's a white paper in the U.S. Combined Arms Center observed the military's diverse strategic interest around the globe required soldiers and leaders to be comfortable and effective working in a variety of cultural contexts, to be able to effectively interact with and influence people from diverse locations and cultures. 2012, an amicus brief before the U.S. Supreme Court, more than 30 retired senior military officers, including Colin Powell, described a highly qualified and racial diverse officer corps as mission critical and vital to national security. So you have the Census Bureau progress. Conclusion: diverse and inclusive workforce is imperative not only to fully represent the United States people and values, but also to improve the country's national security. As such, the incoming administration should ensure that the federal workforce, including the national security workforce, reflects the diversity of the American people and the tolerance and openness of American society. So just check sound working. So I'm not too much following the chat because it looks like you guys are more just talking to each other. But you can see on my thing, I got 9 more studies to get through. Here's another Army overview of cross-cultural training, theory, and practice for the Army. This one's 50 pages, so I might just skim through a few important points. I tried to skim through a whole bunch of this, but you're saying this is 2015. That's a white paper. You are right, Plasma. This is all under President Obama. President Trump may have rolled back a few things like the transsexuals or something. Executive summary: U.S. Army's diverse strategic interest around the globe required soldiers and leaders to be comfortable and effective working in a variety of cultural contexts. Forecasts in the future operating environment indicate the U.S. Army will continue to engage with partners, threats, and local communities and cultures, often considerably dissimilar from our own. As such, soldiers and leaders will need to be effectively interact with and influence people from diverse locations and cultures. In order for the U.S. Army to remain adaptive and effective amid this complex environment, it is necessary to develop appropriate training, education, recruitment mechanisms to achieve improved cross-cultural competence among a wide range of soldiers and leaders. So white paper is the final part in the series of 3 that the Human Dimensions Capacity Task Force is producing that focus on cross-cultural competences. The papers review the existing literature on cross-cultural competence in order to provide a common language and understanding of the key concepts and initiatives that have already been developed in the field, including those in the military. The intent of the series is to broaden the impact and advance the outcomes of cross-cultural competence, training, education, and development among Army personnel, as further emphasis is being placed on the human dimension and the Army prepares for operating environment in the future. The first paper, published in 2015, introduced the concept of cross-cultural competence, reviewed a lot of definitions. So I encourage people, if they're interested, to read through this. And, so you see why the Army cares about it, the necessity, what is cross-cultural training. I bet a lot of you people have been through it because this is basically been standardized across the United States. So, people working for the government have probably already been through this. Here's theoretical background. Social psychologist Garrett Hofstede's cultural dimension theoretical frameworks. In understanding different cultures, you get things like we've talked about: power distance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity, femininity, uncertainty avoidance, and later long-term orientation versus short-term orientation, indulgence, restraint. And I've studied this stuff in business, and you see these studies are pretty universal. I'm sure that a lot of you people watching this are familiar and have even if you don't agree with the diversity, certainly people who are race realists see that cultures do act in different ways, and it's important to know and understand these different cultures for the international world. And even if you're isolationist, balkanist, and you don't want to have to deal with that, you will have to fall in under other people who do deal with that. If culture shock is a foundational concept in cross-cultural studies, it is defined as a normal process of adaptation to cultural stress involving such symptoms as anxiety, helplessness, irritability, and a longing for a more predictable and gratifying environment. So it's saying natural xenophobia, ethnocentrism is natural, and facing this uncertainty of different cultures is difficult for people. That's why it's a process of adjustment that really these studies are trying to prepare people for. We talk about the U-curve of adjustment theory. The U-curve theory of adjustment describes an individual's adjustment abroad as a function of time. Here it is posited that the individual passes through 4 stages of adjustment during their time abroad, and be illustrated in Figure 5. Honeymoon, culture shock, adjustment, mastery. And, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with this stuff. Social learning theory. So this is official Army documents here. There's a lot to it. But I want to show this is not esoteric Duvidism. This is official U.S. policy. This is official U.S. Army documents. Okay. So that concludes my section on the Army and national security. The links are all in the chat. I encourage people to look into that more. And I said, these are not my opinions. This is official U.S. government documents. I showed you the research for the economics and innovation and business, and the official Army documents. And you might. No, I'm not saying they never lie, but I'm just saying I wasn't basing what I was talking about on JF on nothing. I hope that maybe some of you served in the Army. So let's continue. I got a lot more stuff here. Here is more management. Another article. I guess this is somewhere in Europe. Cultural diversity and organizational theory and practice. There's even a journal of intercultural management. Increasing globalization requires more interaction among people from diverse cultures, beliefs, and backgrounds than ever. People no longer live and work for insular marketplace. They're now part of a worldwide economy with competition coming from nearly every continent. For this reason, organizations need diversity to become more creative and open to change. therefore maximizing and capitalizing on workplace diversity has become an important issue for management today. Since managing diversity remains a significant organizational challenge, managers must learn the managerial skills needed in a multicultural work environment. Supervisors and managers must be prepared to teach themselves and others within their organizations to value multicultural differences in both associates and customers so that everyone is treated with dignity. So in fact, diversity, multiculturalism has already become the norm. And, we're already trying to teach people to adapt to this new global world. So a group is diverse if it's composed of individuals who differ on characteristics on which they base their own social identity. There's multiple definitions. There's primary definitions, secondary definitions of diversity. So here, primary dimensions of diversity: race, ethnicity, gender, age, disability. Secondary dimensions: religion, culture, sexual orientation, thinking style, geographic origin, family status, lifestyle, economic status, political orientation, work experience, education, language, nationality. Tertiary dimensions: beliefs, assumptions, perceptions, attitudes, feelings, values, group norms. So, most people in these circles are still caught up in the primary dimensions, that you have to be trained to be able to get past to the more important dimensions. Cultural homogeneity and diversity in the workplace, comparative analysis. Cultural diversity is defined as the representation in one social system of people with distinct, different group affiliations of cultural significance. It has been studied in both laboratory and field setting. Laboratory studies grounded in the value of in-diversity perspective have shown that diversity within work groups increase their effectiveness. On the other hand, field studies guided by social identity and related self-categorization theories have suggested that diversity is associated with negative performance outcomes. So, that's what people are saying. There's studies that show both ends. There's good and bad parts of diversity. Within culturally homogeneous groups, members will have a tendency to communicate with each other more often in a greater variety of ways, perhaps because they share worldviews and a unified culture resulting from in-group attachments and shared perceptions. According to social identity theory, cultural homogeneity in management groups may thus increase the level of satisfaction and cooperation and decrease emotional conflict. Since homogeneous groups do not have significant cultural barriers to social intercourse, positive social associations and in-group social contracts are fostered. This formulation suggests that the deleterious social identity and self-categorization process will not inhibit an organization with a culturally homogeneous management group. As cultural diversity increases, however, social comparison and categorization processes occur, and in-group, out-group, and cognitive biases may occur, creating barriers to social intercourse. Therefore, as heterogeneity in management group reaches moderate levels, the psychology processes associated with social identity theory and self-categorization processes may be more likely to emerge. These processes generate individual behaviors such as solidarity with others in a race or gender-based group, conformity to the norms of one group, and discrimination towards outgroups. To the extent that multiple subcultures exist in a moderately heterogeneous group, conflict is potentially maximized, and intergroup interaction and communication may be blocked. For example, the study found that moderately heterogeneous groups exhibited relationship conflict, communication problems, and low identification of members with an overall work group. Within management groups, the difficulties associated with moderate levels of heterogeneity may lead to negative performance outcomes for an organization, although moderate levels of cultural heterogeneity may create barriers to effective social intercourse. High levels of heterogeneity could actually weaken these barriers, since members will be more evenly diffused over the categories of cultural diversity. In-group, out-group identities will be reduced. In groups with high levels of cultural heterogeneity, everyday social contracts and communication are more likely to involve members of different racial, gender groups. Further, the in-group pressures that inhibit social interaction will out-group members should be weakened. In management groups with high heterogeneity, out-group discrimination is thus less likely to exist. In fact, few common bases for subgroup formation and social identity are likely to exist in management groups with relatively high levels of diversity. In addition, the process associated with the value individual paradigm are fully realized within high diverse management groups. which further enhance performance. An organization with high levels of cultural heterogeneity in management may not be inhibited by social identity process because organization members have many outgroup contacts and may instead distinctly benefit from diverse pool of resources. So you have the double effects of diversity. So in some, in keeping with presented above, research diversity might have positive and negative contributions to organizational functioning, depending on its levels. There are some advantages and disadvantages for organizations which deserve to be discussed in detail. And I encourage people to read through this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Yeah. So conclusions, the diverse workforce is a reflection of a changing world and marketplace. In the laboratory, research diverse work teams bring high value to organizations, and respecting individual differences will benefit the workplace by creating a competitive edge and increasing work productivity. Diversity management benefits associated by creating a fair and safe environment where everyone has access to the same opportunities and challenges. Management tools in a diverse workforce should be used to educate everybody about diversity and its issues, including laws and regulations. Most workplaces are made up of diverse cultures, so organizations need to learn how to adapt to be successful. In the exploratory research, the benefits of the diverse workforce were not fully confirmed. The only advantage of cultural diversity indicated by the companies was a better image and bigger opportunity in the marketplace, with findings the best personnel for companies. Results of the research suggest that diversity is neither a great asset in terms of innovation and creativity or a liability, but definitely is closer to the first one because of its symbolic effect. Okay, very interesting, the important paper. So I'm given what's my best ability to be an objective overview of the state of the evidence, and as we're saying, that we have a bag of good and bad points about diversity in certain aspects. Although you see the Army study, a lot of this is already policy. In the business world, in terms of productivity and profit, the conclusions are pretty clear that diversity is beneficial. And certain, like Scott Page, for certain thinking, creativity and thinking, the studies are also pretty conclusive. So here's a long study about diversity in schools and classrooms. I skimmed through this earlier. There's a lot of information out there in education. So let's go straight to the evidence. So we have the history of the court cases, or what's happening now, and so tracing the history of public policies to create racially diverse schools and universities in America, most notably school desegregation in K-12 and affirmative action in higher education from the mid-20th century through the early 21st century, where we see important distinctions between these two educational sectors. These distinctions help us explain why, at a time of increasing racial and ethnic diversity in the school-age and young adult population in the United States, the policies of K-12 and higher education seem so completely disconnected regarding how to address these demographic challenges. We argue that particularly in the last 25 years, the higher education and K-12 paths have drifted apart on the issues. The Research Jurisprudence Alliance in Higher Education, opinions on affirmative action. So here's an outline of timeline of higher education and K-12 educational research policy, legal strategy on issues of racial ethnic diversity. Prior to 1955, did early affirmative action, desegregation litigation. It shows some lawsuits, Brown versus Board of Education. Across all these cases, researchers and lawyers press for an emphasis on tangible factors, equal access for all students to building, resource, facility, intangible factors, status, prestige, and the reputation of the institutions, association with other students, and the changing of hearts and minds of all students. From the 50s to the 70s, implementation, ongoing litigation, focus on K-12 and higher education, on student assignment, admission, racial balance and outcomes, test scores, graduation rates, greater focus on things that could be counted, tangible factors, less focus on intangible factors, including social cultural issues on campus and classroom, the late 70s to the 90s, the post-Millikan and Bakke studies. You have academic access, admission issues, focus on intangible factors, hearts and minds, including campus hostility related to race, campus climate, and interracial understanding, curriculum, pedagogical issues, ethnic studies, social cultural issues, classes, and detracking movement that addresses the social construction of ability. So mid-90s to today, the divergence between K-12 policy and higher education, K-12 fragmented school districts and inter-district segregation, accountability over diversity, neoplessyism, I guess it's like Plessy versus Ferguson probably, accountability over diversity, school desegregation litigation wanes and remains focus of 14th Amendment issues, most educational research on social cultural issues in K-12 pedagogy not connected to desegregation diversity, but in higher education, focus on educational benefits of diversity, growing body of research to support evolving litigation on affirmative action and First Amendment rights of universities, higher education leaders champion the arguments preparing students for a global economy and society. And it could be both are true, that maybe diversity is more important for higher education than for K-12. And so, it's very interesting. Let me get back, see if I could get this table of contents back. And I thought there might have been something at the end to show. And there's a lot of information here. I don't have an area of expertise in this. This is not my area of expertise, but just to try to be conclusive about evidence, I thought it was important to show this. Education is one of the key parts. Here is Harvard studies, and I'm not going to go into these because it's a lot of reading. It's not my area of expertise. I'm not big into education, but you have multiple Harvard studies on diversity in higher education, theory and impact on educational outcomes. Just click on one of these, and I don't even have access to read these. Okay, we got health outcomes. Here's one last one on education. I got two more on education. This is a big issue, education. This is probably one of the main issues on education. So this is the 2006 U.S. Commission of Civil Rights, the benefits of racial and ethnic diversity in elementary and secondary education, that largely showed that desegregation benefits people and produces better outcomes. So let me see if I get to some of the, although it's hard to show, there's evidence pointing in both directions, there's nothing conclusive. There's a little evidence that racial and ethnic diversity in elementary and secondary schools results in significant improvement in academic performance. Studies the effect of school racial composition on academic achievement often suggest modest and inconsistent benefits. Studies on whether racial and ethnic diversity result in significant social and non-educational benefits report varied results. Many of the early research indicating educational benefits resulting from racial and ethnic diversity in elementary and secondary schools suffered from serious methodological weakness, such as profound selection bias, limitation on purely cross-sectional research, the frequent lack of control group. So, just the evidence. So here it's saying there's a lot of studies and the evidence is weak on at least the K-12. There's a lot of evidence on the college level, but on the K-12, there's conflicting evidence and unclear the benefit of diversity. Although probably for elite performance outcome that you would be able to show the benefit of diversity. If you really wanted your kid to excel, I believe there is evidence that diverse environments do better. So one last study on educational outcomes. This one, they're from the American Council of Education, American Association of University Professors, and it's an overview of 3 different studies. So here is the first one is an overview of views of diversity from college campuses. And then college mission, faculty training, student outcomes in context of low diversity. And the last study, the educational possibility of multiracial, multi-ethnic classrooms. So, as we could see, the consensus opinion is most American colleges and universities have held that all students benefit when campus reflect a broad range of intellectual and social perspective, and that attracting a diverse student population is an important part of establishing an environment that broadens students' perspective. Yet certain individuals and groups have challenged the use of admission practices designed to achieve a more diverse student body on the grounds that such practices favor students of color and discriminate against specific white applicants. So this is an important issue. People like diversity, but how do you achieve diversity? The belief that knowledge of understanding flourishes best in a climate of vigorous debate goes back to the Socratic tradition, but is also part of the current multicultural postmodern perspective. Faculty members view diversity as either unimportant or irrelevant to teaching and learning. They unlikely will ignore it in their classes, with the result that students will be likely to derive little benefit. Was similar to the Deloitte study that just believing in diversity, you have to be inclusive. So here's this study of all these different college professors and in a rating of 1 to 5 of what they think about diversity. And you can see they're all in the high 3s, that a majority of college professors think that diverse campus environments a high priority, and they're committed to enhancing the climate for all students. Extracurricular activities that promote cultural awareness, importance of having a diverse student body, importance of faculty diversity. So all of those are in the high 3s. So it's pretty well accepted among universities that diversity is important. Here the study of over 500 surveyed university leaders, professors, the effects of diversity on the classroom from 1 to 5. And these are lower, just a little bit over 2. And I encourage people to read through these. Negative effects on diversity, pretty low. The amount of people in the ones that lower the quality of the institution, lower the quality of the student, impedes discussions on substantive issues, creates tensions and arguments, pretty low. So very few people were saying that diversity had these negative outcomes, at least on the university setting. Critical thinking, effect on white students. So I encourage people who are interested in this to read through it. So the second study brings Locke, and Locke gave the advantages of travel. You compare travel back then to diversity today. The most selective, highly ranked liberal arts colleges continue to define their missions incorporating academic excellence and service to society. And so we're going to look at these different mission statements. And here you have a bunch of different colleges and what they include as important. And so what are you in university for? So 93% intellectual mastery. In your support statement, 96.4%. So almost everyone agrees the main part of university is intellectual mastery. Service to community, very high. In the support statement, almost 90%. Self-knowledge, personal growth, only a little more than half. Learn perspectives from diversity, about half. In support statements, more than half. So more than half universities include in their mission statements something about diversity. And then you have tolerance, respect, concern for others. In the support statement, over half of universities. So you can see the prominence of diversity across America in terms of university settings. Pretty ways to so here's service to community. Middlebury College seeks students who are actively involved and committed to the ideals of community. For its students, the aims at Oberlin College are to expand their social awareness, social responsibility, so as to prepare them for useful response to the present and future demands of society. And here, diversity, behavior forward, recruit faculty and students representing diverse backgrounds and perspectives. Bowdoin College also causes these individual decisions to occur in context of density and variety of ideals, artistic expressions, and exposure to other cultures and races, so that personal identity will not become an illusion of centrality. Tolerance, respect, and concern for others. An education that leads one out of the narrownesses and prejudices of one's own experience and towards a fuller awareness of oneself and the world. Within a framework of mutual respect, students question one another's ideas and assumptions. So presumably, anyone with a university education is familiar with this, because this is permeating universities. So the last study here, close investigation of the nature of these interactions will help us better understand how and why particular outcomes result from interactions among racially and ethnically diverse bodies. Educational value of racial multi-ethnic classrooms. Racial and ethnic diversity is necessary but not sufficient for creating the most effective educational environments. Okay, so I encourage people to read through that. And still got a minion here. Anything in the chats? Yes, I mean, I encourage people who are more intellectual and want to see the facts to read this. And then the last thing I have is on health outcomes, and then something directly related to JF. So here is actually something on JF's side. As I said, I'm giving an overview of the evidence. I'm not just being selection bias to support what I'm showing. So you can see here, this study showed, and actually the Leibniz, I'm a big fan of Leibniz, the Information Center for Economics. Ethnic diversity makes me sick. An examination of ethnic diversity effects on health outcomes. This study hypothesizes a relationship between ethnic diversity and health outcomes. We explore the effects of ethnic and linguistic heterogeneity measured by indices of ethnic and linguistic fractionalization on 30 health outcome variables in a cross-section of 87 countries. We explore outcomes related to 4 major categories of health: immunization rates, prevalence of disease, life expectancy, and mortality rates. and health-related infrastructures and staff across all dimensions examined, evidence suggests that higher heterogeneity is bad for health. We explore several potential mechanisms which could explain the observed negative effects of ethnic and linguistic diversity on health. So interesting. So economics has shown that benefits of ethnic heterogeneity, as where these studies are health-wise, are actually showing that there's some negative correlations between health and ethnic diversity. So I did want to show this, in all fair academic honesty, my search for truth. So overall, it is evident that the implications of fractionalization on health-related outcomes are unfavorable, or put it differently, fractionalization is bad for health. Several arguments can be put forward to explain these results. First, consider the already mentioned scenario in the context of public good provisions. The negative effects of ethnic diversity on infrastructure and the provisions of public goods in general can explain the observed effect on fractionalizations of health. This phenomenon in particular ties with the results observed for sanitation facilities. The established effects of fractionalization on economic growth and institutional equality could also explain our results. Economic development and institutional equality are poorer for more fractionalized area, given the role of economic growth in better institutions in enhancing health and related outcomes. Other potential channels could explain is in trust and social networks. Evidence suggests that trust is lower for more fractionalized areas. Participation in social group is also lower for more fractionalized areas, given that the formation of social groups and networks is dependent upon trust. Furthermore, information flows easily among social and personal networks, and thus the quality of information declines in highly heterogeneous communities. The connection between social networks and health-related outcomes is very important one, and can explain the observed negative effects on immunization rates. So this information flow is crucial for health. Several individuals depend on social networks to get information regarding important health issues. Individuals that increase social participation and build informal or formal social networks have the opportunity to casually share information about relevant health issues such as communicable diseases and nutrition. So higher levels of ethnic diversity have also been associated with an increase in conflicts. The prevalence of conflicts presents significant implications for mortality rates. Intuitively, one would expect a positive association between conflict and mortality rates. Thus, as conflicts increase, mortality rates increase. Related to this, it has been argued that civil conflicts can negatively affect physical and psychological maternal health and increase the probability of spontaneous abortions. Furthermore, destructive associations with civil wars, such as the destruction of infrastructure, income sources, and crops, can promote issues of malnutrition, lead to poor access to healthcare, psychological stress, and even an increase in the prevalence of disease. Discrimination is another potential channel that could explain the observed effect on fractionalization and health outcomes. A large body of literature explores the relationship between discrimination and various health outcomes, including the prevalence of diseases. Evidence presented by this strand of literature consistently suggests that discrimination is bad for health and specifically presents negative implications for both mental and physical health. However, discrimination is higher in more fractionalized communities, and thus the negative effects of fractionalization on health outcomes could be via its effect on discrimination. Lastly, we consider innovation as a potential channel. As discussed earlier, ethnic diversity tends to promote innovation, which could be good for various health outcomes. However, innovation could also present some negative implications for health. On the one hand, innovation could lead to medical advances, which could promote health. On the other hand, innovation could promote industrial activity, which leads to significant populations that can increase the prevalence of disease and induce higher death rates. So, I am an academic. I am a believer in truth. So I did want to show even the evidence against me. So just showed evidence that shows that health outcomes could be negatively correlated to diversity. So as I said, there are good and bad points. I favor multiculturalism. Multiculturalism could take different form in different places, but I also favor self-determination and local rule. And in people could examine the facts and make their own decisions. I'm a man of facts and truth, so I'm putting out both the evidence for and against me. So here we have Nursing Association, enhancing diversity in the workforce for so it's interesting here. For evidence shows that a diverse medical staff leads to better health outcomes. So possibly a diverse population could lead to worse health outcomes, but certainly a diverse medical staff leads to better health outcomes. And there are different reasons of demographic challenges and health disparities in the U.S. All national nursing organizations, the Federal Division of Nursing, the Hospital Association, nursing and philanthropies, and other stakeholders within the healthcare community agree that the recruitment of underrepresented groups into nursing is a priority for the nursing profession. Nursing shortage reports included those produced by the American Hospital Association, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, Joint Commission, Association of Academic Health Centers, pointed to the minority student recruitment as a necessary step to address nursing shortages. The fact that the national health professions have not kept pace with the changing demographics may be an even greater cause of disparity in health access and outcomes than the persistent lack of health insurance for tens of millions of Americans. Strategies to enhance diversity in nursing. So most people have accepted that the need in medicine to have diverse health staffs, and you could argue different reasons for that, but that's pretty universally accepted. I did the McKinsey study at the beginning. After I'm done with the stream, I'm going to add a table of contents, and yeah, I mean, I'm just putting that. This isn't my area of specialty, so I'm putting the information out there to the best of my ability. And as I say, like, I'm a multicultural. I like it. I think it benefits me. In general, I think it's better for society, but there are good and bad points, and I'm a man of facts and evidence, and that's why I'm analyzing the facts. That's why I'm doing this presentation. And, I'm not telling you what to think, and I encourage you to look into the facts and make your own conclusions. And here's interesting. This last one I put is relates to JF's field of study, cultural evolution theory, how culture evolves and why it might matter, where JF is of the belief that culture is largely a fact of genetics and phenotype, which obviously I believe in the soul and have a different take, and eventually we'll get into esoteric Duvidism on the more esoteric understanding of this. But just what's the current state of research related to what JF was talking about? Human cultural traits, behaviors, ideas, and technologies that can be learned from other individuals can exhibit complex patterns of transmissions and evolution, and researchers have developed theoretical models, both verbal and mathematical, to facilitate our understanding of these patterns. Many of the first qualitative models of cultural evolution were modified from existing concepts in theoretical population genetics because cultural evolution has many parallels with, as well as clear differences from genetic evolution. Furthermore, cultural and genetic evolution can interact with one another and influence both transmission and selection. This interaction requires theoretical treatment of genes, cultural coevolution, and dual inheritance, in addition to purely cultural evolution. In addition, cultural evolution theory is a natural complement in studies of demography, human ecology, and many other disciplines. Here we'll review the core concepts in cultural evolution theory as they pertain to the extension of biology through culture, focusing on cultural evolution applications of population genetics, ecology, and demography. For each of these disciplines, we will review the theoretical literature and highlight relevant empirical studies. We will also discuss the societal implications of the study of cultural evolution and the interactions of humans with one another and with their environment. Human culture encompasses ideas, behaviors, artifacts that can be learned and transmitted between individuals and can change over time. So there's a lot to this study. Is population genetics and cultural Evolution. The first models of cultural evolution drew explicit parallels between culture and genes by modifying concepts from theoretical population genetics, and applying them to culture. Cultural patterns of transmission, innovation, random fluctuations, and selection are conceptually analogous to genetic processing of transmission, mutation, drift, and selection, and many of the mathematical techniques used to study genetics can be useful in the study of culture. However, these mathematical approaches had to be modified to account for the differences between genetic and cultural transmission. Simple observation is that cultural traits need not conform to Mendelian inheritance is sufficient to produce a complex evolutionary dynamic. If children are likely to reject a cultural trait that both of their parents possess, the frequency of that trait in the population may oscillate between generations. In addition, if two biological parents have different forms of a cultural trait, their child is not necessarily equally likely to acquire the mother or father's form of that trait. Further, a child can acquire cultural traits not only from its parents, but also from non-parental adults and peers. The horizontal. Thus, the frequency of a cultural trait in a population is relevant beyond just the probability that individuals' parents had that trait. So you got chart on this. So this is pretty complicated. It's pretty relevant. Trying to link genetics and cultural evolution. I encourage people to read through this and try to understand it. And I'm not big on evolution, although some of this is just genetics. So even if you reject evolution, and you believe in genetics. Let me see if so there's models of culture and human ecology. Thousands of generations of humans have been carving their existence in the world with cultural tools that have become integral to their livelihoods, thereby shaping their environments on all skills, both intentionally and unintentionally. Attempting to answer the question of what are the extensions of human biology through culture leads to a striking conclusion. There are few aspects of human biology that have not been shaped by our culture. Human culture has also been affected by biology, even the survival of non-human species. In this section, we'll review a number of cases for which incorporating culture into models of eco-evolutionary dynamics have proved valuable for interpretation, prediction, in some cases, direction of human ecology and human impact of the ecosystem. Human niche construction, process in which organisms modify their environment in a way that alters the selective pressures that the organism experiences, thus affecting evolution, which can include culture. Major cultural shifts. The key aspect of human evolution is a change over time in human subsistence strategies. Several models consider the interaction of hunter-gatherers with the population. A lot of models of human behavior ecology. Few studies in human ecology consider the dynamics on cultural evolution on which they study behaviors depend. Thus, for example, it is frequently assumed that alternative possible behaviors are available to the human group of interest when they might not be. So this is pretty technical. Hopefully some of you will read through this and we could talk about it more. Back to microbes. There's demography. The growth and age structure of the human population are both affected by norms and belief of their members. A predominantly agricultural lifestyle produces higher population growth than the hunter-gathering lifestyle it replaced. This increased growth was most likely due to the spread of complex cultural traits, whose adoption may have created conditions that favor the accumulation of subsequent culturally transmitted behaviors. Beginning of the late 19th century, part of Europe, Asia, United States, Australia, and New Zealand began to undergo a second demographic transitions, which involved a change from a high birth rate, high mortality regime to a low birth rate, low mortality regime. These changes were due to the spread of fertility reducing and survival increased behavior that became part of developed countries' cultures. Many models for the life history analysis of humans divide the lifespan into ordered series of age classes. So I said this is pretty complicated. I encourage people to read it. Let me see if I can get to the so trying to bridge theory and data, reviewing aspects of human cultural evolutionary theory, focusing on those that are more closely linked to the extension of biology and through culture. recent years, models that are used for decision-making in various fields, such as economics, public health, have begun to take cultural evolution into account, and a growing number also incorporated into the modeling, verbal or mathematic, of the human ecosystem's expected coevolution with the spread of cultural practices. These models play a predominant role in planned strategies related to climate change, reduction of carbon emissions, predicting global food shortages and requirements, and assessing the distribution of new practices and technologies in agriculture. In addition, models in epidemiology have begun to integrate cultural transmission of health practices and pathogen ecology dynamics with regard to drug distribution and combating epidemics. Deeper analysis of how human culture, human ecology, and the human environment co-evolve is necessary for understanding history and present dynamics and for predicting future trends. These analyses will provide much needed tools for the planning and direction of such dynamics, human worldwide well-being, and that of the ecosystem we live in depend on our ability to make such predictions and act accordingly. Okay, that's it. That's all of my presentation. Overview of the evidence. I have some slideshows to continue with. So I'm gonna, let me see who's in the chat. I'm not familiar with a lot of the people in the chat. I appreciate you joining me. Stefano's here. Some of the people from last night. Maybe you guys are new to my channel. And yeah, if I'll try to open this up for discussion at the end. So if you are asking questions, so I do have these some PowerPoints. Here we're talking about university, and this would probably, people don't like this stuff, but this is like the forced diversity training now, that a lot of people, diversity is important and people need to learn it. And this is probably actually more indicative of what's actually being taught at universities and diversity studies. And we'll talk about like white privilege and stuff like that. Changing perceptions, trying to move people towards this multiculturalism vision that, as said, policy, the paradigm of multiculturalism has largely been accepted in the West, although people are rejecting it. So you have these pushes to, how do you change people's perception? And, college campus is one of the few places on earth where people from so many diverse backgrounds come together for a common purpose. So why does diversity matter? To keep pace in today's complex and competitive global arena, American higher education must retire old notions of educational exclusivity, embrace new models of inclusive excellence for students by incorporating diverse content, perspectives, and approaches into the curriculum. Faculty strengthen scholarships and prepare students for engagement with today's complex world. Benefit students, positive effects on students' cognitive development, satisfaction with the college experience, and leadership abilities. Students who interact with racially and ethnically diverse peers show greater intellectual growth and academic skills. Both in-class and out-of-class interactions and involvement with diverse peers foster critical thinking. So we mentioned, looking at the actual studies versus, this PowerPoint. I mean, he's quoting a source. How conclusive is the evidence? It will require further research. Diversity capitalizes on the unique experiences and common wisdom of all cultures by providing a fertile ground for contrast and comparison, provides a view of other people so distinct from yet similar to ourselves, and that our own lives and experience are given new perspectives and meaning. Diversity is an enriching and necessary component of the total education experience. And this is common. Basically, I looked through almost all universities across the country have similar thing, developing an awareness of one's own culture, existence, sensations, thoughts, and environment, accepting and respecting cultural differences, resisting judgmental attitudes, being open to cultural encounters, comfortable with cultural encounters. So certain methods of theoretical model of cross-cultural competence. These are interesting studies. I encourage people to look into them more. Cultural competence is not acquired quickly or casually. Rather, it requires an intentional examination of one's thoughts and behavior. The first step towards becoming culturally competent is realizing that you probably aren't. And here you got your basic levels of denial, defense, minimization, acceptance, adaptation, integration. That people, from ethnocentric to ethno-relative. And here, this is the goal of largely universities and big business and government, is to push people to ethno-relative way of looking at the world. And said I encourage people to think about these and come to their own conclusions. But what I'm showing you right here is more indicative of what a lot of you probably been forced to go through this, and that's what they teach in universities and big business and government, even the army. Capacity to value diversity, conduct self-assessment, manage the dynamics of difference, acquire the institutional cultural knowledge, adapt to the diversity and cultural context of individuals and communities served. So we discussed before different types of diversities and otherness. Diversity within diversity. And, the white privilege. White students often struggle with strong feelings of guilt when they become aware of the pervasive racism, even when they feel their own behavior has been non-discriminatory. These feelings are uncomfortable and can lead white students to resist learning about race and racism, and who can blame them if learning about racism means seeing oneself as one of the bad guys. So white identity development. Let me just check the chat because this is probably more relevant to some of the people watching me now. So these are widely taught in university. This is actually the first time I'm looking at a lot of this stuff. But yeah, I think it's important. So I'm putting it out there, and largely this is just a public study session. White identity development, stage model, contact stage, disintegration stage, reintegration stage, pseudo-independent stage, immersion, autonomy. So the contact stage, denial of racism, and or obliviousness to white privilege. Disintegration stage, disorientation, guilt, and anxiety as the reality of racism break through. Reintegration stage, re-embrace the ideology of the normative white group. Pseudo-independent stage, acknowledgement of others' racism without self-analysis with regard to their own socialized racism. Immersion, search for accurate information about race and a deeper understanding of their own racist societization. Autonomy, cognitively complex and flexible, avoid life options, participation in racial oppression, capacity to relinquish white privilege. So a lot of this stuff is not that popular, but as I said, this is relatively the norm in U.S. universities. That's why I'm going through it. Relatively, it's actually the first time I've studied this. Is not my area of expertise. And this is actually the type session that people have to go through for diversity training. And presumably most of you people watching this will have to go through some form of this, because this is the paradigm that we're working under. And so I went over the overview of the evidence, and encourage people to develop their own opinion. Nationality, ethnic group, race. Generally, universities are going to teach the no scientific base for race. People think diversity is the problem. Obviously, the debate last night, problem emerges because we live in a world that encourages people to use differences to exclude or include, reward or punish, credit or discredit, elevate or oppress, value or devalue, leave alone or harness or harass. The culture is learned. Obviously, I showed the last study about culture and evolutionary genetics. So it's unclear what they're pushing in university is actually scientifically based. But saying this is pretty common to what most people are forced to learn in university and in business and government today. or implicit bias, microaggressions. Why are the white kids sitting together in the cafeteria? Unless colleges and universities create structures to monitor educational achievement among all students. The inclusiveness, recommendation for students to enhance cultural competence, reach out to international students. Too few international students have opportunities to meet and know U.S. students and people, explore opportunities to become a language partner for students seeking to improve their language skills, join the international club and attend events, and invite international students to participate in social and cultural events which you are involved. All students challenge racism, sexism, and homo-negative comments and jokes that demean others. Racism and other forms of discrimination may persevere in parts because people who anticipate feelings upset and who believe that they will take action when faced with an act of intolerance may actually respond with indifference. Stereotype threat multicultural students have reported being affected directly by racist assumptions in class and subsequently felt that faculty were less willing to interact with them, even concerning academic-related issues. Stereotypes. Low ability attributions, self-attributions of low ability, as well as low ability attributions of faculty. Staff can adversely affect the extent to which students become fully engaged in learning, as well as the extent to which faculty and staff become fully engaged in supporting students to succeed in the task. So to the Deloitte, diversity to inclusivity to civility. Civility matters because treating one another with respect is necessary to effective communication, community building, and finding common ground. Creating cultural civility. Diversity plus inclusion plus civility equals community. Value excellence in teaching and learning that we enhance through diversity, inclusiveness, integrity, and collegiality. Positive returns that foster mutual respect and trust. Promotes this atmosphere through open communications, an environment that recognizes and respects cultural diversity by recognizing and being responsive to individual needs. Safe classroom. Discussion and disagreement are acceptable, where established rules of discourse are followed by everyone, especially the instructor. Students may need to be reminded of ground rules from time to time. Once students have reached consensus on a particular point, acknowledge this and agree to move on so they don't recycle arguments over old ground. It may be necessary to call timeouts to allow emotions to cool down, ask students to summarize the discussions, and write down their own thoughts so that these can be shared to restart the discussion, reserve time, and wrap up the discussions wherein students report what they learned and examine conclusions drawn from the exchange. The argument culture. Too many students, faculty understand the goal of debate in the classroom to be to convince other students of their views. Critical thinking should be a tool not merely for exposing flaws in others' arguments, but for the reflecting on one's own assumptions about, and most important, strengthening one's own understanding. Key element in learning from those who are different from you is to listen to their feelings, especially their feelings of being the other in some areas of their life. And next, I've been through a lot of this stuff. I haven't actually read through, like, I had shown this before in my philosophy of science and the paradigms and the parallel worlds. So I hadn't actually read through one of these things to see how the cultural training, but I'm familiar with most of this. Be proactive, include expectations for behavior along with academic expectations, be a model. Behavior serves as a powerful representation for how faculty treat students. Ask why, seek to have students explain their behavior and put it into context. Have a plan to respond to the unexpected, follow through your plans for action, document incidents and your responses. And so this is a review, and it's saying this is pretty common across all universities. Valuing diversity, accepting, respecting differences, being culturally self-aware, dynamics of difference, knowing what can go wrong in cross-cultural communication and how to respond to these situations. So this was a nice overview of what's going on at universities across America. Saying this is, as I said, this has become the norm and paradigm across America. And I got 5 more presentations. That was actually one of the longer one. Here's more on university. This is actually from, where is this from? Internationalism in university. Clear benefits, multiculturalism in terms of the global world and for elite businesses. Any people that are like wealthy or highly educated presumably know it's a global world and the advantages of being able to culturally intelligent to get ahead in the world, even if you are a segregationist or isolationist for support balkanization. The realities of the benefits of internationalism are clear. So this is University of Sheffield Teaching Conference 2013. Internationalism, recruiting international students, curriculum, transformation, rather than merely symbolic. So I get this study in the UK. Intercultural competence required to operate effectively in global contexts is equally important for increasingly diverse and multicultural local communities. Multicultural classrooms, resources to be used purposely to help develop intercultural skills for students, requires an inclusive approach to curriculum and pedagogy and to recognize the value of cultural insights which students and staff can offer. A lot of people like international business will have cultural training, if not like what the last slide was, which was a form of indoctrination, but just learning about different cultures and how to function in their societies, even if you don't favor multiculturalism or integration. But within your small society, and when you have to deal with the global world, how you're going to deal with that. Employability, this fact, employers are looking for graduates with firsthand experience in living and working among other cultures. 79% of chief executives and broad level directors of businesses in the UK think that recruiting new employees' knowledge and awareness of the wider world is more important than achieving a high degree classification. What do employees want? And a lot of these things are developed through international experience. So, even if you disagree about the issues like travel, experience living in different cultures, view of internationalism as one dimension of diversity is not clear that domestic environments could play an equivalent role in offering opportunities for experiential learning in an intercultural context, taking people beyond their comfort zones and creating disorienting dilemmas by engaging with cultural otherness. So, can you offer these international experiences to non-mobile students? Somewhat. I mean, you can by multiculturalism, by bringing the people to your area if that's what you want to do, or just through the web, just watching these streams. So another quick one, European approach to multicultural citizenship, legal and political and educational challenges. So, these are from European institutes about this issue. And as I said, most white people favor multiculturalism, although there's a growing backlash. There's a sizable people upset with it, but certainly among the elites, it's pretty common. This is conference in Madrid in 2008, the Emile Project. Interdisciplinary project studying experience in 9 EU member states with very different experience of migration and integration: Belgium, Germany, Poland, Denmark, Greece, Spain, France, Latvia, and the UK. Respond to current crisis of multiculturalism, the lack of common EU intellectual framework to discuss relevant challenges, elaborate an empirically grounded European theoretical model for multiculturalism that is appropriate to European experience. So this is, before like the Brexit and a lot of the conflicts at the beginning of the economic crisis. European societies are characterized by broad ethnic, cultural, linguistic, religious diversity. Immigration is a large source of this, and this is the case all across the EU 27. Common EU challenge: how to address challenges that arise from the diversity and device policies that aim at minimizing disparities, social exclusion, and polarization. Involves rethinking policies, approaches, and discourses currently in place, devising new strategies. Event involves rethinking perceptions of national identity. At the same time, it's not always necessary to reinvent the wheel, so by identifying best practices, we can see what has been successful in some cases and how this can perhaps be useful, similar challenges faced by others. It relates to what I was saying by JF. Europe, white, is already multicultural by definition because you're including different cultures, although the cultures might be closer to each other. And since you've had some of the fall of the EU and Brexit, and a lot of the European states are seeing that trans-Europeanism is not really working well for them. And what I mentioned, like, okay, once you include French and English together, is it such a big stretch to include the universal brotherhood of man? And if the European Union had been largely successful, why not just create the universal brotherhood of man? So, multiculturalism is already a reality today. This is in 2008. 65% had at least one interaction with a person of a different group in a course of a week. Higher levels of interaction with different groups increase appreciations of benefits, value of multicultural society. What kind of diversity is most commonly identified? 48% different ethnicity, 44% religion, 42% different people within the EU, 36% from outside the EU. So here within the EU, more people are mentioning internal European diversity than external European diversity. Direct relation with the amount of intercultural contact with age, level of education, and degree of urbanization. So attitude: 72% believe that people with different backgrounds, ethnic, religious, and national, enrich the cultural life of their country. Survey within the EU: 23% consider that cultural diversity highly enriches their country's cultural life. 83% agree with the benefits of intercultural contacts, while at the same time, 2/3 strongly believe that their own family cultural traditions should be preserved. 55% of Europeans have a preference for cultural diversity, but want the young to keep their roots, traditions, while 25% have a cosmopolitan approach where cultural openness is not linked to maintaining their own traditions. So this is in 2008. The majority of Europeans were in favor of cultural diversity. And so this is before a lot of the rise in terrorism and the Islamic problems and the Syrian refugee conference. And it'll be interesting to look at more recent data, but I think this is worth studying. And you can see the different approaches that these different nations have taken. You have educational challenges, legal challenges, political challenges. Education. People, here they're already asked a question: Muslim migrants, accommodating them, best practices. Type questions they asked: regulation, how the government should go about dealing with it. What about second and third generation people? All topics for study. Exclusion, inclusion challenges. Policy, language, culture, history. Should people be able to maintain their language? And this was in Europe, Obviously, where different Europeans speak different languages, white is inherently multicultural. So in America, where different Europeans have been assimilated to the English language, is obviously different. In mainland Europe, English is not one of the main languages. So, very interesting. You give a little focus on what's happening in Europe. And I'm almost done in a few minutes. I'll put the link in the chat and let anyone answer some questions. I got 3 studies left, none of them that long. Here's a slideshow for the business case for equality and diversity from Ireland, the Dublin City University. So here is the Irish School of Business arguing in favor of diversity. Smart economy combines the successful elements of the enterprise economy and the innovation of ideas economy while promoting a high quality environment, improving energy security, and promoting social cohesion. A key feature of this approach is building the innovation or ideas component of the economy through the utilization of human capital, the knowledge, skills, and creativity of people, and its ability and effectiveness in translating ideas into valuable processes, products, and services. I found something from even Ireland to show that the business community is pretty universally accepted this idea of diversity being good for business. And a lot of this we covered before. Business strategy. Nice charts and graphs here. Hopefully this will add to people's, what I talked about earlier. And just I'm bringing something from an Irish university to show it's not like this has been pretty universally accepted. Research in the USA has highlighted a positive link between proactive diversity management initiatives and organizational effectiveness in terms of productivity, creativity, attraction and retention of talent in employees, and the attraction of a diverse customer base. Positive links between affirmative action programs and performance. Positive links between ethnic diversity and performance. Evidence from the US and UK indicates that increased top management team diversity in terms of functional background, educational age, ethnicity, gender has a positive effect on firm profitability. So equal opportunity policies across the globe, human resources. Some nice infographics so people gain from this. Idea of flexible work hours, performance. We didn't discuss that much. Semi-related to diversity, flexible work hours. A different religion, people have different holidays, different practices, different worship patterns, and to have flexible work hours is important. Irish employees working flexible hours report reductions in work pressures and higher level of autonomy, while those working part-time report reduced work stress and work pressures. An Irish study of work-life balance found that satisfaction from working hours and working arrangements were found to be positively associated with overall work satisfaction, life satisfaction, and related to lower stress. Flexibility and performance. Employees are more efficient and deliver more profit to the business with absenteeism rates that are 2% less than the UK average. So not all these are directly benefited, but I wanted to show the universality of what I'm saying, that this is from Irish business school, related to labor unions, of equality bargaining emergence as a result incorporating women. Study of French and UK trade unions indicate that unions are relatively marginal to the process of introducing work-life balance policies, and the employer-led initiatives often place them in defensive position. However, there's a strong link between the existence of equal opportunity policies and work-life balance policies in the workplace. And the presence of women in the union showed to be crucial. Research in Scotland suggests that the equal opportunity agenda continues to be marginalized within collective bargaining. However, the emergence of specialist equality officers is a key insider articulating the case of action has progressed. The equal opportunity agenda within the unions, at this time, the leadership provided by such specialists may be constrained by bureaucratic structures with unions and undermined by apathy, hostility, a lack of awareness among workplace activists. More research from Scotland, equal treatment model, and to a lesser extent the difference model, and while making some reforms, unions are not substantially engaging with the underlying structural causes of inequality. UK suggests that unionized workplaces, the treatment experienced by black workers compared to white workers is perceived to be more unequal than non-unionized workplaces. So the cost of ignoring diversity, which we've discussed many times, replacing employees who leave because of lack of opportunities or discrimination within the workplace, absentee cost if employees feel undervalued, experience discrimination, harassing or bullying, legal costs where employees take a case plus damage to corporate reputation, like frame game Starbucks, productivity reductions due to increased turnover and absenteeism, increased conflict within the workplace, increased management cost, poor internal communications. Success factors, leadership, vision and values, integration of equality and diversity objectives into business objectives, assessment of specific needs of organizations, and tailoring of management of diversity to those needs. Challenges: lack of awareness about equality and diversity and what they mean, limited capability to develop and implement equality and diversity initiatives, lack of commitment by senior management. We discussed most of these earlier, and they were in the Deloitte study and others, and I encourage people to look through those. So we got two more finishing up. Another short one from Edinburgh, Scotland. I want to show the universal acceptance in the West of these principles of diversity in universities. So here, Edinburgh, Napenborough, cultural diversity in higher education. Why is cultural diversity beneficial to healthcare education? Challenges of the diverse student population. So here we got numbers of international students. 400,000 in the UK. Majority of those coming from non-Europe. So in the blue are the European international students coming from one country of Europe to another, and the red are from so UK the most, then France, then Germany. All, a few 100,000. I think in America it's in the millions. Austria has higher amount of European than non-European. So Scotland, 50,000 international students. That's over 20% of the students in Scotland but that includes from other parts of Europe, are international students. In Wales, 18%. In Northern Ireland, it's 10%. In the UK, it's about 20% also. And that has been increasing. We look at the statistics, first degree, postgraduate, differences between the 10 years, 2004 and 5 to 13 and 14. So same benefits. Here's the UK. Benefits as perceived by UK prospective undergraduate students. 87% believe it will give them a better work view. Only 2% disagree. 76% believe it will give them a strong global network. Only 5% disagree. 68% agree it can improve their foreign language skills. Only 11% disagree. However, 29% think it could slow down the class. The majority disagree, 42%. 67% disagree the academic discussions would be lower quality. Only 11% thought that it would lower the quality of academic discussions. Similar challenges. So these are international. That's why I'm bringing you evidence from Scotland, my ancient ancestral homeland. And most of these are just the same, but so I wanted to bring some further evidence to show, from Ireland, from the EU, from Scotland, that a lot of these things are basically universal across the West. And I have one final power show, and then I'll open it up to anyone who wants to join. We could talk culturally responsive environments, culturally responsive teaching. You can see this from Stetson University Diversity Council, and this is like the other one, kind of generic diversity training type thing that most people have to go through. And so I've showed you the universality of these ideas of the benefits of diversity, especially in higher education, let alone in society. So this is in the workplace. So this is the type things that people in the workplace have to go through for diversity training. Cultural competence is a philosophy and a way of life that enables us to appreciate, reject, and help people to achieve their highest level of humanness. Eleanor Roosevelt, that has a history towards it. There's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the UN 48, recognition of the inherent dignity and the equal and unalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world, the universal brotherhood of man. Furthermore, Article 1 of this UN Convention, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 15, everyone has the right to a nationality. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality, nor denied the right to change its nationality. Article 26, everyone has the right to education. Education shall be directed to the full development of human personality and to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It should promote understanding, tolerance, friendship among all nations, people, racial, or religious groups. And this is the United Nations Declaration of 1948. So, here, this presentation, we got some 60 slides. Provide participants with experiential and practical applications that enable educators to bridge existing gaps in cross-cultural interaction with ethnicity and racial diverse student groups. And this is specifically at Stetson University. Thank you, Stetson. Methodology. Looking at the past, we were monocultural, one dominant society. Present, to focus on two dominant groups. You got blacks and white, or white and Hispanic. To the future, focusing on all the culture in schools, college, communities, and agency, moving towards this multiculturalism. I'm in favor of multiculturalism. It only minimally exists more in elite circles today. The elite circles today are increasingly multicultural, but that is going to increase across all of humanity in the future. All the experts are predicting this. People might be fighting it. You got the historical background. 48 UN Declaration of Human Rights, 1960s Civil Rights, Cultural Sensitivity, 1970s Women's Rights, 72 the EEOC Act, 1908 More Human Rights, Carter Declaration, 1990 Global Rights, Multicultural Education, Cultural Diversity, 2000 Cultural Competence in Cultural Responsibility Teaching Focus, Beyond Sensitivity, Awareness, and Understanding. Today it's doing, thinking, and feeling culturally connected habitually, and most of all, feeling culturally empowered. That matters. Starts the recognition, awareness of one's own biases, prejudices, the decision to become less ethnocentric but rather more bicultural, acceptance of at least one outside culture, grows with the knowledge and acceptance of three or more cultures, enhanced with sustained cross-cultural context of openness, and actualized through the acquisition of cross-cultural skills based on substantive cross-cultural encounters that lead to cultural proficiency and empowerment. Going from negative to positive, from cultural destructiveness, incapacity, blindness, precompetence, competence, proficiency to empowerment. think systematically about their practice and learn from experiences, and exemplify the virtues they seek to inspire in students: curiosity, tolerance, honesty, fairness, respect for diversity, and appreciation of cultural differences, and examine their practice, seek to expand their repertoire skills, deepen their knowledge, and adapt their teachings to new research and theories. So the exercises. This is actual training slides for the actual cultural training. Cultural competence refers to the ability of an individual to interact effectively with people of various cultures. You have the iceberg model here, where you see language, food, and clothing, but beneath that there's communication style, belief, attitudes, values, and perceptions. So in order to do this, a teacher must have an awareness of their own culture and attitude towards cultural difference, knowledge of different cultural practices, views, as well as cross-cultural skills. In effect, a culturally competent person must have the ability to see beyond the tip of the iceberg and understand other cultures in much greater depth. Florida enacted in 2002 a bunch of laws related to this: history of the Holocaust education, history of African Americans, Hispanic contributions to the United States, women contributions, education for speakers of other languages. It was 2002 in Florida. Holocaust education as in African American, Hispanic women's studies has been enacted across many states in the United States. So for research definition of cultural competence, most definitions of cultural competence use terms to describe an increased cultural awareness, knowledge, and change in attitude. Other authors take these definitions of cultural competence further, describing it as a process rather than endpoint. Yet Weniger discusses the need for lifelong commitment to a journey of increased cultural understanding. Malaise stresses the need to actively seek cultural experiences that expand one's own cultural worldview. And Kapna-Bakote includes the educator's ability to effectively work within the cultural context of a student as the practical outcome of cultural competence. Effectively working within the student's cultural context requires a developmental process for the professional. Further, the ability to relate and communicate effectively when individuals involved in interaction do not share the same cultural, ethnicity, language, or other salient variables. Basic cultural competence occurs when organizations and practitioners respect differences, engage in ongoing cultural self-assessment, expand their cultural knowledge and skills, and adapt services to fit the community's cultural situation and perceived needs. You've got research, some keywords: habit exhibiting, automatic cultural diversity awareness, cultural competent behaviors, cultural sensitivity, cultural assessments. I'm going to read this because this is pretty cool. Like, I'm a multiculturalist. To me, this is gold. If you oppose this, it's saying you might want to live separately in your ways, but you want to be a world person and you're just knowledgeable. If you're not curious about this, you don't have to watch. The habit of exhibiting the appropriate behaviors with respect to the diverse cultural, ethnic, and racial student population. Habit is used to indicate the automatic response actions of educators based on personal knowledge and individuals' cues and preferences. Thus, cultural competence is a process where the practitioners automatically exhibit cultural diversity awareness, culturally competent behaviors, and cultural sensitivity, all which are integrated into the cultural assessment of the student. So beyond sensitivity and awareness, culture is the glue that enables an individual to make sense of the world, is the frame of reference for our intentions, behavior, and impact and influence on others. Culturally responsive teaching means integrating cultural content that enhances achievement for all. Students are more likely to master essential reading, writing, computation skills when the teacher uses content that deals with significant, diverse human history and cultural events, especially the history of contemporary contributions of their ethnic groups. Leave these up there long enough you could pause and read through these if it's interesting to you. Culture responsive teaching, what is it? Children whose language and culture align closely with that of the school are advantaged in the learning process. Those that feel devalued or unrecognized become alienated and disengaged from the learning process. Cultural responsive teaching does not focus on stereotypes of the culture, such as food and art. It is based on ways of communicating and learning that are familiar to the student, along with themes that are empowering to them. Culturally responsive teaching requires that teachers interpret their students' behavior within the cultural context of the students. They know the cultures of the classrooms and reflect on the impact of this cultural knowledge. Gay 2000 defines cultural responsive teaching as the using the cultural knowledge, prior experience, and performance styles of diverse students to make learning more appropriate and effective to them. It teaches to and through the strengths of the students. Seek to maximize learning opportunities. Teachers gain knowledge of the cultures represented in the classrooms and translate this knowledge into instructional practices. Validating, comprehensive, multidimensional, empowering, transportive, emancipatory. Pedagogy that provides equal access to education for all students of diverse cultures, which recognizes, responds, and celebrates these cultures. Student cultures are recognized as important and referenced in all facets of learning experiences. Acknowledges the legitimacy of the cultural heritage of different ethnic groups, both as legacies that affect students' dispositions, attitudes, and approaches to learning, and as worthy content to be taught in the formal curriculum. It teaches students to know and praise their own and each other's cultural heritage. It incorporates multicultural information, resources, and material on all the subjects and skills routinely taught in schools. Develop intellectual, social, emotional, and political learning by using cultural reference to impart knowledge skills. Educating design for racially diverse students incorporates culturally mediating cognition, culturally appropriate social situations for learning, and culturally valued knowledge and curriculum content. Multidimensionality, cultural responsive teaching involves many things: curriculum content, learning context, classroom climate, student-teacher relationship, instructional techniques, and performance assessments. Teachers from various disciplines, language, arts, science, social studies, music, may collaborate in teaching a single cultural concept, such as protest. Students can also participate actively in their own cultural presentations. Transformative. So Banks asserts that if education is to empower a marginalized group, it must be transformative. This involves helping students to become culturally responsive and being able to make reflective decisions and implement their decisions in effective personal, social, political, and economic action. Cultural responsive teaching does not only incorporate traditional education practice with respect to diverse students, it's respecting the cultures and experience of various groups and then uses these as resources for teaching and learning. Excluding the consideration of students' cultures is likened to teaching reading with no prior knowledge. As teachers, we are always looking for the meaningful activities that connect the known with the unknown. Incorporating individual aspects of cultures naturally produces the connections, but taking into a step further nurtures the respect and appreciation for all cultures. Justice, equality, caring, closeness, dialogue. Okay, read this. Coggins, I cannot be responsible for someone I cannot change, and that is you. I must be responsible for myself and the things I say or do in the conduct of myself. Only you have the power to change the things you do in yourself. If you will accept personal responsibility for your own behavior, and I accept personal responsibility for my behavior, then together we will influence others around us to accept the same responsibility for the things they say and do in their behavior. Okay, so that is my presentation for today. That's everything I prepared. I guess I've been on for a few hours now, and I will put the link in the chat. I'll open it up. There's still 11 people here. I don't know if Babs is here and wants to join in discussing this. I enjoyed this. I said this kind of just like a public learning sessions. It wasn't so interactive. The chat, I guess you were more talking with each other, but yeah, I did put the link in the chat if anyone wants to join. I'll stay on for a little bit and listen to comments, complaints, discussion. Otherwise, I'm going to call it a day. Look through some of this chat. And you want to increase the intellectual content of these streams. So that was my intention. So even if you don't have anything to discuss, like I'm more intellectual, I like people, I don't really care about people's opinions. You got to do the research and the homework. And as I said, I presented evidence that both supports and goes against my worldview and outlook. And because truth is an important, honesty and truth are important values to me. Flipping up here, a lot of chat here. Not sure if anyone's gonna have the, who actually cares to come on, or got something to add to this. People who have been following, telling me I got Insane Hermit, Blue Lizard, and XN Valdez in the chat. Hard to follow the chat. Like I'm reading through, and it's tough to see what people are talking about, or its relationship to, and it's tough, to keep concentration, especially like my incoherent, just jamming together a bunch of information, and when I upload the video and it's done processing, and I have time to watch it through, presumably tonight I will the table of contents, which should be beneficial to people in terms of who just want to review certain parts of it or only care about certain parts of it, because it's going to be like close to a 3-hour stream, and there's a lot of information here. So Insane Hermit, you made your comment. I'm not sure. It's hard for me because this one I'm getting a lot of feedback, and it's hard for me to follow everything. It's hard for me to obviously, there's hundreds of chat just in my own, videos. Just finding all the chat could be difficult, let alone like all the stuff on JF's channel. Like my notifications, I had so many notifications. Like I woke up, I got tens of notifications. JF's got hundreds of comments. I'm looking at this right now. The people are replying. I'm replying to some of these comments on JF's video right now. So add my response video to that. Doesn't look like anyone's coming on. Not sure there's so much interesting to discuss. I saw references to the Putnam studies. I mean, I'm not sure if you have a link or some. I mean, it's tough. I mean, is there other people doing it? There's readings. This back in 2007. NPR, does diversity really work? And I haven't read through the studies, and so this isn't actually my field of expertise. So, I did my best to research, to present some evidence, and I don't know how much time, like relatively, I don't have that much time to go through all this stuff. I wish I did. Time is very limited. And I'm not that political. I'm saying, like, I'm a multiculturalist. I'm not actively involved in politics and, trying to change society like that. My goal is more, I'm more interested in science and theology, although like I am generally a multiculturalist, and I do agree with Kevin McDonald. I think that Jews generally are multiculturalist, and we should examine this societal implications of that. And that's why I'm out here. I'm happy to defend the JQ. It was an honor to be on JF that he invited me to be the person to debate multiculturalism. There might be other people that have better expertise in this than me. I'm sure there are. I might do another Ask the Rabbi. I want to keep these streams separate. So I want to separate, just like now I'm live, if people are going to ask me random unrelated questions. I want to have these topical so that these streams are out there and people could look back in the future. And you could relatively, I think I'm putting out content that's not really out there. And that's part of my purpose of doing this. And it's like I've somewhat exhausted my own research. Obviously, you could see by how much your research there's on the subject, and you could spend your lifetime in research on any of these subjects. But in terms of like high quality YouTube content, not that much, so it's like I feel kind of good about having done so much research and now being able to put it out there and hopefully benefit people. My feedback is relatively positive. Obviously my views on like multiculturalism or people just attacking me on the JQ that I have to deal with. But I think my research in general, hopefully, will be respected, and it'll advance the causes of intellect and philosophy, and will benefit many people who will come to my channel and watch this stuff in the same way that United Duties of the Heart, and that book profoundly changed my life. Well, I'm not prescriptive. Said that in JF's Survive. I'm not prescribing what you should do. There's a lot of benefits to multiculturalism. There's a lot of benefits to diversity, and there's problems with it also. And I encourage people to do the research and make their own decisions. I'm not prescribing it. That's why I may not be that interesting to argue with. Like, I'm not really that political. I'm not that active. I'm just an independent intellectual. I have my personal preferences and beliefs, and I'm willing to express them. But no, I don't think that people should be compelled to. I'm more libertarian and believe in self-determination, and that's why I'm in the forum of ideas for people who may not have thought about this before. That I'll provide some sort of enlightenment and ideas, but I'm not prescribing anybody what they should do. And I always encourage people to do the research and make their own conclusions. And I disagree with Kevin McDonald, Luke Ford, that people should have 120 IQ, and I don't even believe in IQ like that. I believe in the potentiality of all people, and generally, I think people will do what's best for themselves and are capable of making intelligent decisions. Even below average intelligent people can largely make intelligent decisions and develop some basis of the facts and research to make good decisions. And my minimal research that I'm putting out there, I hope it's beneficial to people. I see you watching me last night, you watched me today. I hope you gain from it. And I put a lot of time in this relative. Like, I didn't get any benefit from doing this. I enjoyed doing it because I'm an intellectual, but like no one's paying me to do this. I'm not really gaining any friends on YouTube from putting out these videos. It's more intellectual endeavor. And I think I didn't even eat lunch yet today. Like, I skipped my lunch to do this, but I did want to respond to well, I tried to put the evidence out there that the push for racial diversity, and we discussed last night maybe the part of empire, the collapsing empire and the sustaining of empire, that could be partially in the diversity is meant to help sustain empire. In the countries that were never really part of empire don't have such a big push, like Norway or Finland, Iceland, and it's more the collapsing empire that has some effect on the demand for immigrants and diversity. And it could be like ill-gotten gain, like in America, where you have historical conflicts with Mexicans and Africans, that if there's ill-gotten gain, karma's a factual element, It'll be more esoteric Duvidism, but righting historical wrongs. So yeah, maybe if like Norway, Finland, Sweden, Iceland, they don't have so many historical wrongs, that they don't have such a big problem with this. I appreciate you posting those, Stefano, and I don't know if I'm going to have time to research it. Like, most likely my video at the end of this, and I'm going to rewatch it myself, and I'm going to add the table of contents and timestamp in the description, and I'm going to have to move on with other stuff because this isn't my field of research. And like, I don't know if I'm going to be debating more multiculturalism, I'll probably do more research, and hopefully I'll have time to come back and read the Putnam studies. But I mean, I have so much stuff on my agenda right now that and this is really just intellectual curiosity for me. It's not even related to my business and being a civil engineer or what I do professionally, or religion or personal in any of that matter. So, this is to some extent like a public service that I did this research, and to somewhat legitimize my own political beliefs in multiculturalism. But I'm not active on this issue. That's how I live my life. I already live in a multicultural way and area, and I'm not prescribing what America should do. I'm just sharing my beliefs. And if there's more venue for debate, I will do more research. But as of now, there's other things that I'd like to invest my time into researching. Someone join here. Is that you, Babs?
Hello.
Yeah. Just a brundle in the chat. My most of like the 3 hours was in presentation.
Yeah, I was watching the whole time.
You watched the whole thing?
Close to it, except for 30 minutes when Monique was streaming.
Oh, he streamed in the middle. So what'd you think?
Mixed feelings. I think that, I guess, there are a few takeaways that I have here. One is, well, I'm really tired right now, so now wouldn't be a great time to sort of like go about giving my full thoughts on this. I mean, because you're just wrapping up the show now. But first of all,
it's more like a public study session, because most of this stuff is like, I was kind of just like publicly doing research for the sake of other people that might benefit, of me just reading on my own.
Well, here's my perception.
As opposed to the other stuff I have more, like that I've more studied. Like this is, you might even know more about this than me. Like in terms like history of science and evolution, the soul, like that I've put 20 years of study into. This is not something I've done much research into.
Yeah, this isn't something that I've done that much research into either. I've done a bit of research into like Putnam, but there were more than Putnam. I think I can think of at least 4 other researchers who have done investigations into like the effects of like racial diversity and ethnic diversity and cultural diversity on social capital. And I think that if you're going to be checking out something right now, or checking out something next, you should probably try to focus on some of the more social capital oriented studies rather than like these sort of like things that talk about how diversity makes things better for corporations or academia. Because the fact of the matter is, even if some multinational corporations, like even if they get to bring that much percentage higher back to the shareholders, or productivity is up by like 3 ticks this term, it's like that like, let's say if I was like a person and it's like, if I get, let's say my choices are lower social capital in the place where I live and all the ramifications and stuff that comes as a result of that, but in exchange, multinational corporations where I'm living will get 3 to 5 ticks higher on productivity this term. It's like, okay, all right, so what? That still doesn't seem like a very convincing argument to me. But at the same time, it's also like, that's why I think that you should look more into stuff like diversity, multiculturalism, and social capital, where there are some negative things, but even Putnam, at the end of his study, he had some things that, that adds a bit of like nuance to it, and some people just hand wave and dismiss it. But I think that, yeah, social capital is probably the thing that you should be focusing on next, as opposed to like this sort of corporate academic stuff. Either way, it was an interesting stream, and yeah, keep this stuff up. I'm going to really tired, so I got stuff to do, but thanks for having me on, man.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for coming for at least a little time. And mainly I wanted to document proof for what I had brought yesterday in the debate, so I wasn't just making things up, that everything I said, there were studies behind, and I hadn't done a conclusive study. I've heard of Putnam. I hadn't really read his stuff. I've heard of social capital. It didn't pop up in my research like today. if I had like a few slides and looked in it. I don't even know if it makes sense to, like if I could add it right. So see if I could find a nice. So it is popping up. Let me see if there's something interesting. Maybe I will add this to, just to be more complete. Okay. Am I that autistic? I guess I'll take Bab's advice and I'll go over, I'm going to re-enter, I guess. Okay. I'm going to go back to screen share, and I'm going to I took my microphone out, so if someone followed the link, I won't hear it. So I'm going to go back into slide share and just to, try to be more conclusive, include a quick presentation on social capital. Actually, I found a long one, so I'll be learning about this a lot for myself. There's a Center for Social Capital that had PowerPoints available. Introduction. Robert Putnam defines social capital as the social networks and the norms of trustworthiness and reciprocity that arise from them. Focuses on who knows whom, the character of these networks, the strength of our ties, levels of trust, levels of reciprocity. I know a little bit about this, but so we're learning this largely together. Yeah, thick trust, where trust extends only to known friends and associates, and thin trust, where trust extends to include total strangers. Growing elements of trust, repeated exposure and shared spaces, honesty in communications, follow through on commitments, consistency in behavior.
Hi. Before you start on that,
formal versus informal. Oh, up with the headphone. You're back here, Babs. I took my headphone out, but
yeah, no, I'm sorry about that. There was something that I forgot to mention that was really like jumping out to me when you were reading all those first studies is diversity. See, the thing is, like with studies like this, with any study, really, what you should be looking at is you really want to look pretty precisely. And I'm not saying that you haven't been, but like just maybe a once over looking. It's really important to look at like the methodology and the way in which they define terms, etc. And you were doing that a bit before, but if you didn't notice, like for a lot of those studies that you were reading before, and a lot of these studies that talk about how great diversity is, a lot of these studies, their diversity is things like diversity of educational background, diversity of job experience, diversity of city that they grew up in, diversity of even ethnicity. But what we aren't really talking about here is even sometimes cultural diversity, but what we really aren't talking about here so much is racial diversity. So a lot of times there'll be ethnic diversity. So it'll be like, diversity amongst a team of like Jews, Arabs, and Assyrians, or amongst a team of like Norwegians, Swedes, and like, Finno-Swedes and like Danish people. But it's like, just keep in mind, because there were a bunch of studies you were reading earlier that when they were talking about diversity, they're not talking about diversity in the same sense of like Putnam's racial diversity. When he talks about that, they're talking about diversity in the sense of, and I mean, I think one of the reasons why they do this is because if they tried it with racial diversity, they probably wouldn't have as easy of a time of showing the benefits of diversity. Because they'll select for, I mean, of course, that's just my take, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like, I mean, because when they talk about ethnic diversity, they could again be talking about like, Irish people, Scottish people, English people, and Welsh people. Like keep that in mind when you look at these studies. Just wanted to let that out.
I mean, in the EU study, that's considered international. So when you have a European country that has students from another European nation, that's considered international. Even the study I showed from the conference in Spain in 2008, that most Europeans, when they refer to multiculturalism, are referring to different types of Europeans than other non-European nations. And yeah, I mean, it's important. Like I said, like I went through in the philosophy of science and how to look at social science and the value of statistics and correlations. And relatively, this is all like weak science. I'm more into like physics and the hard sciences. And so I'm just doing an overview for, to justify my belief in multiculturalism. But like, I don't plan on advancing too much. I do a little research or well-roundedness, and hopefully other people, if like someone like you or someone else, will have time to read through all this stuff, because I said, like, I don't really have time for all this stuff. Time is very limited. But this show I'm doing right now might be the end, for a long time of my research on this, unless like I have forums where I'm continually debating on it. And in that case, I will do more research. But yeah, because I do value truth and facts. But yeah, I just don't have that much time for that. And all the studies are in I'm going to post in the table of contents all the studies too. So the studies are already in the chat, and but I will go through a little bit of the social capital because it's related. So public regard, private regard, formal versus informal. Bridging, social ties that attempt to cut across different differences, including race, gender, disability, class, religion. Bonding links people together like themselves. There's intensity of social capital, strong, weak. Strong ties are useful for creating social support and sustained efforts. Weaker ties are more useful for networking and job searches. The goal, raising social capital, improve one's standing in the community. Targeted specific problem solving. Okay, so that was from the Center for the Study of Sociological Studies. So this one's actually quite a bit longer, 37 slides, more in depth. University of Trento, Italy. So social capital, joint European master in comparative local development for the Balkans and other area transformations. I was just able to find from the University of Trento in Italy on social capital. So taking Bab's suggestion, and so here a graduate course in Italy on the issue that had some slides publicly available. Thank you, Paul Blocker. Social capital, main things: conceptualization and origins of the notion of social capital, 3 different theorizations of social capital, Coleman, Putnam, and Bourdieu, the role and problems regarding social capital in pluralistic societies. So you got embeddedness. Social capital is a necessary condition for successful local development, social integration, and political participation. Attention for significance of social ties as well as cultural underpinnings for local development. Understanding of ambiguities in social capital. So intellectual origins of the concept of social capital are wide-ranging. Human capital, civicness, community, social norms, and cooperation. Social capital can be seen as indicating an approach rather than a concept. The notion of social capital fruitfully combines various strands of research that pose afresh the issue of the nature of the social order. Conceptualization of social capital. Social capital addresses 3 important questions: sociality, sociability, social embeddedness. Sociality is the motivational drives of human behavior and action in social contexts. Sociability, concerned with people's tendency to associate with other in groups. Social embeddedness, mechanisms of social integration and reproduction. Sociality, the idea that rationality is the basis of social action, but is neither completely freestanding as an under-socialized views of rational action, nor completely predetermined by social norms and structures, as in the over-socialized accounts of behavior. Sociality is based on the ideas that actors internalize norms and adhere to the obligation and social structures for cooperation, and structures are not only constraints but also resources for self-interested actions. Sociability, the problem is about the impulse for people to enter into more close relations or association with others. Sociability entails a different way of explaining how social capital works, not on the basis of functional account of how of a resource for instrumental action, but in a culturalist and structuralist view of social capital as resources for cooperation and democracy, associations and social relations to trust, community. Social embeddedness. Social capital is one form of capital among others: human capital, cultural capital, economic capital, capital because an investment of time one makes in social relationships or the kind of trust one puts in others. Social capital is a theory of social reproduction, similar to the Marxist interpretation of capital as social relation rather than a material thing. Bourdieu's theory of social capital underlies the importance of social capital as the accumulation of past relations which contribute to determine the future. So we got James Coleman, collective resource. Coleman endorses rational choice idea of social action but rejects extreme individualistic views. Social capital, a resource for action. Coleman rejects under-socialized understanding of social action, extreme rational choice, and over-socialized view of structuralism sociology. The aim is to import the economic principle of rational action for use in the analysis of social systems proper, and to do so without discarding social organizations in the process. Social capital is defined by its function enabling social action and consists of some aspect of social structures and facilitates certain actions. Social capital inheres neither its singular actors nor its physical goods. Social capital is part of the structure of relations between actors and among actors, or including organizations. Functional definitions. Social capital can take a variety of forms as long as it facilitates distinct actions, cultural ties, organizational link with civil culture. We got obligations and expectations, information channels, norms and sanctions. It needs some level of closure of social structure, effectively imposing norms, generating trust. Social capital often derives from original organizations set up for a specific purpose, which lasts beyond the original goals. Putnam. Robert Putnam. I was thinking Hilary Putnam, the cognitive scientist. So you got Robert Putnam. Robert Putnam focuses on the relation between democracy and civil society. Maintains main concern is the importance of a strong and active civil society to the consolidation of democracy. Like de Tocqueville, the idea is that the quality of public life and the performance of social institutions are powerfully influenced by norms and networks of civic engagement. The argument is that social bonds are crucial for both successful democratic societies as well as for social economic modernization. Putnam found in the study of local government in Italy that the quality of governance was determined by long-standing traditions of civic engagements or its absence. Preconditions of a successful democracy include, according to Putnam, voter turnout, newspaper readership, membership in choral societies and football clubs. In other words, civic engagement and social bonds. Social capital, according to Putnam, consists of features of social organizations such as networks, norms, and social trust that facilitate coordination and cooperation for mutual benefit. Main components: trust, social norms and obligations, social networks and associations. Networks and civic engagement foster norms that generalize reciprocity and encourage the emergence of social trust. Networks that facilitate coordination and communication, amplify reputations, allowing collective actions dilemmas to be resolved. Networks reduce incentives for opportunism. Networks are grounded in traditions of collaboration and broaden participants' sense of self. So Putnam's interpretation builds on Coleman. Social capital is a resource for action, but in a culturalist interpretation. Thus, for Putnam, the essence of the notion is civicness, a disposition to act in a way that takes as its purpose the common good rather than individual self-interest. Related to republicanism and communitarianism, de Tocqueville's civic association and civic culture. Civic virtue then explains efficiency and cohesion of society. Indicators of social capital include membership in associations, services, officers on committees, members in organizations, club and church attendance, union membership, attending exercise class, health clubs, league bowling, trust, honesty, and morality. So Pierre Bourdieu, according to him, social role is accumulated history and is not to be reduced to a discontinuous series of instantaneous mechanical equilibrium between agents who are treated as interchangeable particles. One must reintroduce into the notion of capital. So it's focused on agents or actors and their particular positions within society. Life is not roulette. Changing one's social status quasi-instantaneously is not possible. One of the premises of Bourdieu's sociology is that society is made up of distinctive social fields. Forms of capital, economic, cultural, and social are the core factors defining positions and possibilities of the various actors in any field. Each social field, arts, education, law, politics, economy, has a distinct profile depending on the proportionate importance within it of each of the forms of capital. The forms of capital controlled by the various agents are trumps that define the chances of winning the stakes in the game. Capital, accumulated labor in its materialized form or its incorporated embodied form, which, when appropriated on a private, exclusive basis by agents or groups or agents, enables them to appropriate social energy in the form of reified or living labor. The structure of the distribution of different types of subtypes of capital at a given moment in time represent the immanent structure of the social world. Cultural capital consists of embodied state, long-lasting dispositions of the mind and body, objectified state, cultural goods, institutionalized state, a form of objectification. So social capital consists of the aggregate of the actual or potential resources which are linked to the possession of a durable network of more or less institutionalized relationships of mutual acquaintances and recognitions. In other words, the membership of a group which provides each of its members with the backing of the collectivity-owned capital, a credential which entitles them to credit in the various senses of the word. The volume of the social capital possessed by a given agent thus depends on the size of the network of connections he can effectively mobilize in the volume of the capital, economic, cultural, symbolic, possessed in his own right by each of those to whom he is connected. Social capital is never completely independent of other forms of capital because the exchanges instituting mutual acknowledgement presupposes the direct re-acknowledgement of a minimum of objective homogeneity, and because it exerts a multiplier effect on the capital one possesses. Nice chart. Another nice chart. Another nice chart. And a final nice chart. Okay, so I took Bab's suggestion and Stefano's suggestion, and I added a little bit of Putnam and social capital to this, and still got some people watching. So I still got a minion. Thank God. Thank God. I still got a minion here. Yeah, I mean, John, I'm about to end it, and you might want to wait because I'll add a table of contents, and so once I add the table of contents, it'll be easier if you want to watch this whole thing straight through. You can. There's a lot to this issue. As I said, this isn't even my area of expertise. I'm trying to. I'm just basically publicly doing my research. And, we'll see if I talk with JF again next week or have more opportunities for public debates. If that's the case, I will do my research. I will do my studying because I want to be accurate. I don't like wasting people's time. And, but as of now, that's all I got. So I'm going to sign off and, say shalom. I didn't even eat lunch yet. It's 6:20. It's almost time for dinner. So God bless everybody. Shalom. Appreciate you watching, and hope you gain from that, and I gain from it. And I'll do my public service to everybody and increase education and knowledge and the intellectual output of these streams that we're on together, so that when we move forward together in the future, it'll be with a higher level of intellectual content. So shalom. Bye-bye.